Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 European Series for 2021, as brought to you using Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PC. Tonight marks round 3 of the championship, the 8-round championship. We move into the second quarter, and as you can see here for tonight's schedule, we kick off with the pre-show, and in approximately 10 minutes we get underway with the driver's briefing before qualifying commences at half past the hour. That's 7:30 at British Summer Time, or UTC +1 in the evening. After that 15-minute qualifying session, which will determine our order, of course, for the starting lineup of the race, we'll be getting underway with the 75-minute feature-length race at 7:45 this evening, and that will be the single race we have tonight. And of course, all points are for prizes, and at the end of the race, we'll be interviewing our post-race podium finishers at 9 o'clock. The commentary team, of course, is myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and you can watch this broadcast on 3 different platforms tonight. It is the Next Gen Racing YouTube channel, alternatively the Next Gen Racing Facebook page, alternatively on my own Twitch channel, that is twitch.tv TX141. Now, of course, this series would not be possible without the assistance of the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy, our partners for this series, our major partners, and we are grateful to them. A brief introduction of the SimGrid: if you're looking for one place to go to find out all of your different racing leagues, particularly for Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing, whether they be small or big, the SimGrid is the platform from which they're hosted, and looking to bring together as many individuals as possible in order to go racing online together for prizes or just for fun. Be sure to take a look at the SimGrid, Google search them, or the simgrid.com for further information. They need a fantastic platform, and the platform through which daily races on Assetto Corsa Competition on the PC are also hosted. We've also got the Coach Dave Academy, a brilliant resource for those who are looking to learn more and more about Assetto Corsa Competition. It's a specialist website where you can find out about all different setups, tips, tricks, professional advice, whether you're looking to improve a particular car, circuit, or setting up the car right for your liking. Go to Coach Dave Academy and you can find out plenty of information. I'm currently using them to find out how to set up a GT4 Ginetta on Assetto Corsa Competition, and if I can use them, you guys can as well. Those are our 2 partners, and we're very grateful to be working with them to host this series. Now, after 2 rounds, let's talk a little bit about the championship standings. We can see here our top 10. We've got Yesfield leading at the moment on 136 points after that 3rd place in race number 1 due to a post-race penalty being applied, and then the win last time out at the very rainy Zandvoort circuit. Yves really running away with this championship by the looks of things as it currently stands, and a little bit of a surprise perhaps there, but we can see Jonathan Atkinson in P2 in the Bentley Continental GT3 doing a very good job of consistent performances here, and on those 110 points, definitely doing well to be in that P2 position. But he's got Nico Quizma in the AMR V8 Advantage, very close behind him. The number 7 driver in 3rd place on 108 points, and we can see that our top 10 are very close, whereby we've got our top 5 only being separated by the region of 40 points, and with plenty of points available for each race win or even for being on the podium. It could all change as of tonight's round. We go a bit further down the order, looking at our P11 through to P20 there, and we can see that we've had a bit of a mix-up now that we've had 2 rounds. Some drivers having a better round 1 than others, meanwhile others having a better round 2, and then those who had the more consistent rounds, we've got the likes, for example, of Brandon Warren up into P11 now in that Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo on 82 points, and leading Ingo Horman, who is in 12th place at the moment with the Porsche 911. We can also see Linden there, who unfortunately will not be racing tonight, as I'm to understand he wasn't able to make tonight's round. Tobias Linden in P14 on those 78 points, but we can see we've got a 3-way split at the moment on 78 points between Mustakis, Linden, and also Harikonen. And Harikonen, last time out, of course, you'll remember him as finishing in P2 back at Zandvoort. Very pleased with that result, and we'll be wondering whether he's able to pull off an even bigger result tonight. P21 to P30, again you can see the mix up of names there, and one driver in particular who we'll talk a little bit more about in a short while is Richard Jepp, I should say, pronouncing his surname correctly, having a difficult time so far in his opening 2 races, and indeed we'll be looking to him to see what he's able to do in the Mercedes tonight at the circuit. And we can also see there, we've also got Dave Jr. now up into P24 on those 56 points. Continuing to go down the standings, P31 to P40. We've got Loisinger there in the BMW M6, had a very difficult opening quarter to the season, and likewise Swenson there in P32, having had that disconnect in race number 1, and then being able to finish the race in what was, if I remember correctly, P13 in race number 2. Swenson starting to rise up the ranks, and I should correct myself, ladies and gentlemen. Last time out I referred to Swenson as a male driver. No, Mia Swenson, as many of you have probably wanted to correct me, is female, so I'll be using she rather than he from this point onwards. And then going down to our last set of standings from P41 to P51 there, we can see some of our drivers who haven't been able to participate so far or have had disconnects or disastrous races, and we'll be looking to try and bounce back as much as possible. But let's talk a bit about the track then. Tonight we head to Italy. We head to the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari circuit, but you can know it in short as the Imola circuit, a very famous circuit of course, steeped in history, some of it not so glorious, particularly when we look at Formula 1 for example, but we won't go into the specifics around there. For those who know, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to, but indeed the circuit located in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, and a very, very different circuit. It's quite a power circuit here, in the fact we've got a lot of very long acceleration zones, and we can see a total of 19 corners, a number of chicanes. In fact, we have got effectively 3 different chicanes, plus also the very difficult double left-hand combination right at the end of the circuit of Ravazza, turns 17 and 18, where we can expect a lot of battling to occur. And indeed, as we come down to the rules, once again, as always, in the 75-minute race, there is that mandatory pit stop window which splits the race in 2, where drivers will be required to change tyres and also put at least 1 litre of fuel in the car. And that is inside a 10-minute pit window across the middle of the race. We'll be coming on to the driver briefing very shortly, but let's switch over to what's happening on circuit right now. And it should pop up any moment now. Give us 2 seconds, folks. Just getting a very slight delay in our camera feed there. There we go. That's all sorted. Apologies for the slight technical thing. But as we can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you asked for it and you've got it. We now have the live timings of our drivers. So in the practice sessions, we'll be able to see, and indeed in qualifying, you'll actually be able to see the timings of our drivers in terms of their fastest lap in qualifying and the delta between the drivers. So that way from now on, you'll be able to see individual lap times. And in the race as well, we've been able to find a way to get you those live gaps as well, so you'll be able to see the distance between the 2 drivers rather than relying on approximations. So we've been able to fix that, but enough away from the technical advancements that we've been able to make. We now look to the circuit here and watch as our drivers are making their way around. And coming back to Kevin Harikonen here, as we see he's making his way around the circuit right now in the Ferrari course, going into Acqua Minerale. The thing about Harikonen, I had a chance to catch up with him going into tonight. What he was saying is that he's not expecting the same result as last week in the Netherlands, but instead this time round he's finding that he's struggling a lot in the last sector, particularly Acqua Minerale, but he's going to try and just get a consistent performance in and get a good result today. He feels as though he's got good pace. Now he'll be battling with the Porsches here, and particularly say the Porsche of say Voss, alternatively Field, and we can see Voss here parked in the pit lane, and we've got Field as well just parked up right now with the driver's briefing 3 minutes away. And I think it's the case that for Harikonen, he'll be just looking for a good result. If he can probably get in the top 10 tonight, I think he's going to be very happy. Meanwhile, coming over to Richard Jepp, we can see Richard right now, I believe, just making his way around on the circuit as we just try to find him. In fact, he's parked in the pits right now, and he is sandwiched between himself and also a Mercedes there, the Harwin Racing Mercedes in between, and that is actually Richard Jepp in the Mercedes, it should be pointed out. He is not the Bentley there. We can see we've got 2 cars parked inside one another. Not exactly sure what's happened there, but we will find out in due course. But the 2 are clipped into one another right now. But what Jepp was saying was that going into tonight, he's feeling like he's had the pace to be at least in the top 10 last 2 rounds, but he's been tangled up in incidents, unfortunately, so he's really hoping for a strong finish tonight and going forward for the rest of the season. So he really does want to bounce back compared to how it's been for the first 2 rounds, and we look forward to seeing whether he's able to do so. Now we still do of course have a couple of minutes before that driver's briefing, which we'll be listening into, as we see most of our drivers are parked up in the pits. But we've got Kjellgren here making his way through Acqua Minerale right now, the Swedish driver of course in the Aston Martin Vantage AMR, the V8 machine, as he makes his way out of the corners there and heading up towards what is the final chicane, the Alta chicane here, going into the right to left combination right now as he flows through here. Kjellgren had a difficult time last time out at Zandvoort, but the fact he was caught up in that instant, of course, over the course of the race, which cost him effectively what was expected to be a podium finish, but he's going to look to bounce back tonight as we are very briefly going to be getting underway with the driver's briefing. We can see Lardier here making his way out to Tosa and heading up towards Piratella right now. now the double left-hand combination of turn 9 and turn 10 as he makes his way through here, and you can see just very composed in the Porsche 911, and now coming down the hill towards Aquaminerale as we jump to the driver's briefing any moment now. I'll get it whispered in my ear, and whilst we are waiting for that, of course, we say hello to those of you in the chat. So we've got Lerb there in the Twitch chat along with Burnt Fry. We say hello to Vivia Flowers as well, who's on the YouTube chat, and also Zeronic in the Twitch chat. Without further ado, let's get over to our driver's briefing. So we're just waiting for Kevin Smith to take us away for the driver's briefing. Of course, this is an opportunity for our drivers to ask any questions they have with regards to certain rules that may need to be adhered to over the course of the race.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Next Gen's European Series at round 3 of what appears to be going to be a very hot Imola track tonight for the race. So no return to garage during qualifying. Lap 1 instance will remain at a drive-through for anyone found at fault for causing the incident. We will be also keeping a higher penalty for any instance throughout the race, as at the moment driving standards could be improved and a bit more awareness from everyone taking part. So in terms of exiting the pits during the race, please remember to check your relative and mirrors, as you know it is coming into a very fast turn 1, the driver's coming down there. There is one mandatory pit stop, tyres and fuel, which is the same as the last races we've had. And I believe that is it, everyone. If anyone has any questions, could you please put it in the general chat so we can quickly answer those before we move over to qualifying in 2 minutes' time?
So in terms of questions, I think we're about to have a question from Hill, and I'll just read that out to you so that way you can hear what's being asked. Obviously, Kevin can't hear me on the microphone right now. I'm muted to him. I think Hill just taking a little bit of time to type this one out, so just bear with us very shortly, folks. Of course, the digital era, they're not all in a hall on deck chairs trying to be able to talk. But whilst we are waiting, now of course the statement with regards to the penalties being high, of course, on lap number 1, driver instance triggering drive-throughs effectively.
If no one has any questions, that is driver briefing over. You are allowed to leave the room now, and we will forward to qualifying in 2 minutes. Any questions, please PM myself if possible. Good luck, everyone.
So that was the driver's briefing there, and as we heard with regards to penalties, it's the case that we are looking at a higher standard of penalties for at least this race, if not the rest of the season, as it is felt, as described by Mr. Smith there, the fact that a number of the incidents perhaps should not have happened over the course of the first 2 races, and so that we need to be a little bit stricter. And of course, having that drive-through penalty for anyone who triggers an incident on lap number 1, it does, in the minds of many, seem very harsh. But it's also to try and calm people down, because we can find, particularly not necessarily in this league, but if you watch other sim racing leagues, what you may find is that because it's seen as sim racing and not real world racing, sometimes drivers will get a little bit overexcited going into that opening lap, thinking they essentially can use a bit of aggressive contact in order to gain places when everybody's trying to get their tyres up to temperature. But not here. Instead, we're taking a much stricter approach. And of course, if any instance and penalties are awarded, I'll be able to keep you updated of those over the course of the race. But as our drivers are getting ready to head to the circuit, we can see that we are currently on that free practice, but any moment we should be switching over to qualifying in due course, as we see that everybody just waiting to get underway now. Not too long to go, as we've got the Grumpy Monkey machine there of Ross Bartle currently parked up the Bentley, of course, and Bartle being a very strong driver and indeed doing a very good job as part of the Grumpy Monkey pairing. His other colleague, of course, from that team, albeit they're not racing as a team today. And they're not racing as a team throughout the season. But if we just go down our order here, as we see, we are moving on to qualifying. So we'll be right back for qualifying, folks. Alrighty then, so 15 minutes, who is going to be on pole? That is the big question, of course, with these qualifying sessions. Will we see a potential upset? Will we see a change in our overall order? Or will it be the case that our drivers, who we typically see up the front, and none other than Mathis Voss, will we see the Frenchman go on pole once again? The problem with Voss, it's been over the course of this season, is that he's had a very strong qualifying session, only to see things go completely downhill in the race. Not necessarily through fault of his own, but it's been a very difficult one for Voss, and you have to imagine right now that he feels as though he is overdue for a win after seeing the win disappear in round number 1, and pretty much that one mistake letting Field get ahead of him, and then further mistakes with the pit strategy seeing him have to do a second stop and drop all the way down the order and having to fight his way back. And of course, it wasn't the ideal day last week at Zandvoort, but we're on to round 3 now, and Voss, we know, can bounce back, and he has come back again, looking fighting fit in the Porsche 911 here. The number 222 driver making his way right now down towards Aqua Minerale, and you can see the ITR drivers there in a little bit of a sequence making their way. Everybody coming around quickly to Aqua Minerale right now and trying to get her into an order where they can be making their way around the circuit and get as many laps in. Now, in terms of the situation, you can see our temperature, our ambient temperature is 36 degrees centigrade, as we see Loisinger making his way through Tosa right now in the BMW M6. 36 degrees centigrade in terms of the overall atmospherics. Track-wise, 46 degrees centigrade. Now, what does that mean, and why is it important? That means we are a very hot circuit. So much so that this race is going to be just about as much about keeping it cool in terms of your tyres and your brakes as it is about being the fastest guy in circuit. Because if you overheat the tyres, then you may end up finding yourself having to put on a new set of tyres for a second time. Alternatively, you end up in a position, as we see Atkinson takes us onto a lap here, you may end up in a position whereby you're not going to have the tyres to go to the end unless you completely curve the pace. But Atkinson right now making his way through the opening chicane here, and then heading up towards the Villeneuve chicane after turns 2, 3 and 4, heading up towards 5 and 6 right now, charging along. He is the first driver to go onto a fast lap here as he comes through the chicane. Very difficult sequence of chicanes here, but you can see how we have those long straights between each of these technical and twisty sections, and that's why I think it's going to be a bit of a different one here in terms of we're looking a bit more towards the power cars here, and you do have to wonder how the Bentley's going to perform, and also the likes of, say, the Ferraris and that BMW M6 of Loisinger, which is very strong on the straights. As we see here, we've got Atkinson making his way through Piratella right now, looking very composed, the OTL racing driver, now coming up through that left-hander, second in the championship as it currently stands, the number 21 driver, having put in consistent performances, and qualifying again, he's normally been targeting being just in or just outside of the top 10, but he's been up there and been able to make the places in the race. And as Atkinson now makes his way down towards the auto chicane here, we say hello to Alan Baldwin in the YouTube chat, as well as CJW Racing in the Twitch chat, and we also got their Neil Quirk supporting Millsy on there, and Greg B as well, both of them in the YouTube chat. They're good to see you guys tuning in, and if you are there tuning in, do not be shy, feel free to say hi as we come back to looking at Atkinson right now and seeing him make his way down through to the final two corners. The Ravazza double left-hander here of 17 and 18, and then of course he's got the little right-hand kink to take him across the timing line. That will be turn 19. He's coming up to it very shortly, and as he comes across the line here, what's going to be our opening qualifying time from the Bentley driver? It is going to be, in the end, as he comes across that time line right in, a 42.9 42.3. He sets the pace. And meanwhile, behind here, we do have, making his way right now in towards Tosa once again, the Mercedes AMG driver here, and the Brit from Harwin Racing, of course, are looking to try and get a better result tonight, and he's going to start off by doing the best he can in qualifying. As we take a look up, and immediately Voss going the fastest of anyone, a tenth and a half faster than Atkinson there with a 42.213, and it's definitely the case that Voss really wants to be on that front row once again, and we have seen the Porsche drivers do seem to be very strong in qualifying as a whole, but we of course will wait and see what they're able to achieve, because this is a bit of a different circuit, and also those tyre temperatures and those track temperatures are going to really change the dynamic on the cars. As we see Harikonen meanwhile P3 as it currently stands there with what is a 1:42.612 as he goes a bit wide there coming out of Villeneuve, and we can see behind him we've got a whole sequence of cars including the Lamborghini there coming charging through, although we're not 100% sure who that was right at the back. That everybody trying to come through and getting a little bit trapped on top of one another right now in terms of our drivers, as we see Warren making his way across the line, the American, and we jump on board for a lap with Brandon. So making his way through to the first chicane then, as he comes through turns 2 and 3, and he's going to have the left-hander of 4 just after this, and getting a good run through the opening chicane. The Ferrari here being very composed in terms of the rotation through the corners, and now coming up towards Villeneuve, into the left-hander he goes here, coming down through the gears, throwing it onto that high curve before going and just wide a little bit there of the apex of the curb to make sure he doesn't throw the car wide before coming up towards Tosa. Turn 7, the hairpin corner here, one of the slower corners of the circuit. You've got to bide your time, get the car tucked in on the apex before powering out of it and use the full width of the circuit. He does so, Warren, very nicely, and now making his way up towards Piratella here. Into turn 9 he goes, the left-hander coming up, and there you've got to be all about timing it to perfection in terms of getting on the throttle. He does so very well there, and now coming down to Old Aqua Minerale. Turns 12 through to 14, the right-hander into effective what is in a way a chicane here. As he comes through the right-hander of 13, he goes a little bit deep, but he gets it under control, but that will have cost him about a tenth of a second because he wasn't able to get on the power immediately. The car was just starting to understeer wide as he now goes up into the Alta chicane here, the final nominated chicane. As he comes through, you can see that riding a bit too high in the apex, and that's actually disturbed his lap. Just one little mistake by clipping too much of the second apex curve at Alta, and it sends the car drifting wide there, and that's where you've got to be so careful with the chicanes and the curves, as Warren will now have to go around once again the VRS satellite racing driver, trying to push it to a limit, but hitting that limit a little too soon, as we see that provisional pole has gone back into the hands of Atkinson. 42.0 now. Voss is a tenth down. I think the Brit and the Frenchman are going to be trading that position all the way through, but don't forget we do have Kjellgren who's just come across the line, the Swede here with a 42.3. that's pretty much provisional P3, so Kjellgren not hanging around either. He wants to get himself right up the front here, and with the dry conditions compared to the wet last week, he definitely probably feels that he wants to be right up the front, because it won't be the case he'll gain places through people making mistakes. Oh no, it'll be the case that he wants that track position all to himself. But as we take a little look further down the order, we can see we've got Gareth Mills here, the South African driver, the GM Racing driver here, and we know we've got a number of people tuning in on YouTube supporting Millsy as they refer to him, the South African in the Audi R8, and making his way. He's got a bit of traffic ahead of him right now as he comes up into Alta here, but we're going to stay with the Audi R8. We haven't seen too much of the Audis, to be fair, this season so far, albeit it's normally been because they're a little bit further down the field, but we wonder whether Mills is able to take this Audi a little bit higher tonight and get further up the order. He's currently P21 on a 43.956, so a little bit off the order, about 1.8 seconds off of our pole man, and indeed approximately so in the region of 8 attempts to get himself into the top 10. But let's jump on board right now and give you a feel for what it's like riding on board in the Audi. So making his way onto a lap then, as we transition onto the dashboard camera here for you, and he's going to take us around his Mills. So coming in to turn number 1, he's gone through the little kink right-hander here before coming up towards the first chicane, and as he does so, coming down through the gears, going into left-hander. You can see they're just gradually throwing the car through, again in nice and collected before coming through 4 now, the left-hander here, full throttle, and now heading up towards Villeneuve. And what we're going to see here is a very similar pattern where he'll want to straighten out the first part of the chicane in order to get the best possible speed into the second part, as he throws it in there and takes a wide line through the apex there of turn number 6 before coming up into Tosa now, and that's in order to carry the momentum through and let the car naturally rotate itself through the corner, because the thing of course with the Audi mid-engine rear-wheel drive, it's got a lot of natural rotation through the rear under braking, because you've got all that mass at the rear coming forward from the car, and as he makes his way up towards Piratella right now into turn 9 he's about to go, you'll see this here, he'll do sensitive movements as he turns to the left here. It goes a little bit wide of the apex curve though, but he does collect it to avoid a track limits incursion going wide, and as a result as he comes down to Aqua Minerale now, he'll have lost a little bit of momentum as a result of that mistake at Piratella, but now as he comes through the corners here, very nice flying line through Aqua Minerale, just clipped enough the turn 13 curve there, and now heads up towards the Alta chicane, the final chicane of course, as he comes into that braking zone at the 50 board. And will he nail this? Will he clatter the curbs correctly? He does indeed, and the rear end rotates around very nicely, and Mills having a good command there of that rear end as he makes his way down towards Ravazza. Now turns 17 and 18 away, the final two proper corners on the circuit as he comes down the hill into that left hand braking zone he goes here at the 50 board. Goes a little bit deep, but he does collect it once again, and Mills definitely has got time out there that he can still gain, but at the same time being able to keep the car composed, and this is looking good for Mills. He's currently P26. How will he improve as he comes across the timing line here with 5.5 minutes of the qualifying session to go? He comes across, and it is going to be, is it an improvement? It doesn't look as though it was an improvement from Mills. In fact, no, it was quite close. He was actually 4/10 off, and that's those little run wides that we saw throughout the lap, just costing Mills the ability to improve his lap time, but still a composed lap as he parks the car up on circuit, and we look up towards Ladier right now. Our P10 man, he's currently actually P11 as he's about to jump into the pits, and of course all of our drivers have been asked to return to the pits naturally rather than jump into the pits, as we see Adel come in making his way around the circuit right now. Currently provisional P5 is the Porsche driver, the Belgian, making his way onto another lap. We're just catching him as he's going through Villeneuve right now, and he's been a very strong driver, has Romain, but it's been a difficult one for the Valkyrie Esport driver. I think he's found that he's had a lot of pace in the opening two races, but it's not necessarily always gone his way. Particularly round 2 last week, it was a difficult race for Delcomen, and we are looking to see whether he's able to get the resurgence of form which carried him towards the top in round number 1 at Catalonia. As we say hello to Governor ITR, who's supporting the ITR team drivers, of course, on the Twitch chat, and a quick shout out to Governor ITR. Without his support, it would not be possible for us to have all these lap times on the left hand side of the screen. Alternatively, as you're going to see in the race, the actual race time deltas between drivers now. So if you want to give a shout out to somebody in the chat, say thank you to Governor ITR for helping us make that happening. But staying back with the action here, as we also say hello to Hookhack, who is supporting Addy in the chat. And I believe that is one of our Swiss contingent. We can see here that we have got Delcom making his way down towards Ravazza now with 4 minutes to go. And as he charges down the hill here, going to be looking to get this as composed as possible. The Porsche, of course, being one of those cars which we've seen when our drivers get it right in the Porsche, they look so smooth by comparison to the other cars because you've got that mid-engine rear-wheel drive. But Delcom actually coming into the pit, so deciding not to stay out. And instead we can see a lot of our drivers now getting themselves set for 1 or 2 final laps here as we flick the camera around to see Atkinson tripping over a couple other cars here, making his way down towards Aqua Minerale by the looks of things. Well, in fact, that's heading down towards Ravazza, my apologies. As we see, he's got some traffic in his way, the OTL racing driver. He's currently provisional P2, 2/10 off of Voss, who has raised the bar to a 41.8. Voss not giving up the challenge here, and it looks as though Atkinson is going on to another lap. As we see behind him, you have got Leusinger making his way around, of course, and all the way down in P32 right now. Only 34 drivers at the track today, not everybody able to make it as it currently stands, but still, when we're missing the major numbers, we have got the creme de la creme out on the circuit. As always, we do love to see our drivers out here and putting on a good show, and we hope to see some fantastic action between all of them. As we see Mustakis coming across the line, and his last lap was an out lap, so now the Bentley driver making his way around the circuit, and we're going to stay with this Bentley driver as he makes his way through the first chicane, through the Tamborelli chicane, and now heading up towards Villeneuve once again. And you can see there the Bentley being very, very stable. It's a heavy car, so as a result it can attack the curbs more aggressively because it won't get launched off of them as much as the lighter cars such as the Ferraris, alternatively the Porsches, and that's where the Bentley is very strong. On top of that as well, it's got quite a large fuel tank from what I'm to understand with the Bentley, so it's got stability and also it's got durability in the race, and those are key factors which will hopefully propel Mustakis to a bit further up the order in qualifying, or at least in the race it definitely will. He's currently P24 on what has been a 1:43.5, putting him 1.7 seconds off of our pole man as he makes his way down towards Aqua Minerale now, and we can see the Bentley Team M Sport driver here having a good flow through the right-hander into Aqua Minerale. But what about the double right into left? He does get it composed very nicely indeed. He's got a little bit of traffic ahead of him, but it's moving at a good pace here, so I don't think he's going to end up tripping over another car ahead. He will have one more lap after this one, of course. All our drivers will be running their cars as light as possible, minimum fuel in qualifying to keep it as light as possible and get the best possible straight line speed as he makes his way now down towards Rabat. So into turns 17 and 18 he'll be shortly going. Will he be able to settle this down, or will it be the case that it's a bit too much? Well, I think in the case of Mustakis, he'll be able to nail this once again. He goes to the first left-hander, into the second one, and what will this be come that timeline? Does he improve here as he comes across, or is it a case that it's a bridge too far for the Bentley as he makes his way across that timing line? It is going to be, is it an improvement from a 43.5? Is indeed. He is up to provisional P2 at 22 with a 43.2, but immediately Mills goes a little bit faster there. The South African driver getting up to P22 now in the Audi, of course, as we have got 1 minute remaining in this qualifying session. And will it be the case that Vos, the man you're looking at right now, the Frenchman, is able to take pole position for the third time? This would make it 3 poles in a row, if I remember correctly, and that is going to be a very good standard to set. And indeed, that is going to be a little record within this series, which is being set by the Frenchman. But then he'll be asking himself, can I convert this pole into a win? As we see Carl Pontus here making a very good day at qualifying so far, and in fact we can't actually see him on circuit right now. I don't think our camera is showing him, so apologies for that, but Carl Bomb has managed to get within a very close range of Vos, only half a tenth off of our pole man. As we see then, it is a battle between Atkinson and the man you're looking at right now, Kjellgren, for what is the second row. And who's going to be at the front of that second row? Well, they'll be starting side by side, of course, but they'll want to get dibs over one another. As you see Kjellgren actually getting held up here by the Porsche in front of him, and that is going to compromise his qualifying lap completely. I think neither of them can settle into an order of who gets the priority here, but in the end Kjellgren makes his way round. But I think both of them might have some words to say to the stewards after this one. But further down we have got Appel in P6, provisional P6, the German driver right now from Appel Racing in the Aston Martin VMR Vantage, of course, doing a very AMR Vantage, of course, doing a very good job to be in that P6 position. As qualifying comes to its end here, Vos has already crossed the line, mind you, and we'll see Appel come across. Will it be the case that Vos is able to take this one, or will we see a surprise at the moment? I think it's only between Carl Bomb and Vos for pole position, but Appel, does he improve here? He does not improve, so he's finished his qualifying session on a 42.1. That was his best a little earlier on the session. Svensson not improving from that P7. Kjellgren around the circuit right now, but I don't think this is going to be an improvement given the fact that Kjellgren got held up on the lap with that little altercation. Carl Bomb has jumped back to the pit, I believe, and then Vos making his way right now up towards what is a Piratella, and I think it's Vos is to take, as Carl Bomb is definitely not running around on circuit right now, as I'm to believe. Yeah, he's just parked up here, in fact, so Carl Bomb is done with qualifying, so he will not be changed. I think it is going to be the case that pole position is going to go to Vos, all things said and done, because he'll be coming around very shortly. We're just taking a look further down our order right now to see if anybody else has been able to improve. I'm not seeing any major improvements from anybody else right now. As we look a little bit further down our pack, you can see we have got Walker here in the McLaren, the highest of our McLaren drivers right now in P11, and Walker, the British driver from Distinct GG, is doing a very good job, and in fact is really becoming alive in round number 2 and again in round number 3 here. We can see in qualifying Walker doing a solid job in P11 currently. He's on a lap. Will he be able to nail this one, or will it be the case that it's too much to ask for? He's in P11 currently in a 42.4. Is he able to improve? He does indeed. He improves to a 42.3, putting in P9, although he does clatter into the wall, and that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. We will very shortly be bringing you the race. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, whilst we're getting ready with 4 minutes to go until the race kicks off, I'll take you through your grid order. You have got Vos, who will be taking us around at the front of the grid. Alongside him, Pontus Carlbom from Sweden, alongside the Frenchman. Behind, it will be Atkinson, and next to him, it is Kjellgren, as we try to get a little bit more alongside our drivers, rather than these distant cameras at the moment, but we can't seem to find a way around it. No questions, no problems. As we see, then we've got Field in P5 in the Porsche there, and Harikonen line up alongside him in P6. Apple in P7, Joris Apple there, the German driver, doing a very solid job. We haven't seen too much of him towards the front, but he's now found his way up there. And then we have got Svensson lining up in P8. Svensson there doing a very good job in the Ferrari. Indeed, we're expecting the American to have a good race here. And speaking to Svensson before the race, what she was saying to me was that tyre management and having the right setup to avoid overheating the tyres will likely be key here. And I think she's really thought about that. And also praying for no disconnection. Been having some technical issues, particularly in race 1. And we've got our fingers crossed. Made it to the end of the Zandvoort race last week. And hopefully we can see that happen again. We'd love to see that Ferrari and what it's able to achieve. And where it's able to take a fight to Harikonen and of course the other Ferrari driver in our top 10. Dilkemin, the Belgian here in P9, starting off our 5th row, and alongside him will be Ben Walker. So Romain being joined by Ben here on that 5th row, and Ben being the McLaren driver. In fact, he's gained, I believe in the end it was the case that he did get up to P9 but was dropped very slightly down the order right at the end of qualifying. And then we have got Ross Bartle lining up in P11, alongside him will be Cerida. So those are our front 6 rows. To go further down the order at this point, we won't be able to see the drivers properly due to the camera angle available to us, but really it will be the big question now of who is going to be able to perform in the race, and everybody will have that on their minds as they wait to go around on the circuit. And feel free to give me your predictions in the chat as to who you think might be able to win this one or do well. As we see there, we've got Chris Bell supporting on the YouTube channel. He's supporting Go Team Sausage Dodgers. So indeed supporting those guys as we await to get underway. But I think really now the big question for me is whether Voss can pull it off this time. It's been 2 races back to back where he started on pole only to see it fall apart. But the Intruder Racing Team driver here making it 3 poles out of 3. Indeed, could it be the case that he's going for the whole string of pole positions over the course of the entire season? Can he bring it home? I would tip him to be the favourite here. He is overdue that win, but of course being overdue it and actually getting the win are 2 very different things, and we'll wait to find out what he's able to accomplish. But as we are waiting to get underway, we've got 1.5 more minutes. Indeed, we've got Lurb there in the Twitch chat saying that he thinks that it's Voss's time to shine this round. And we see Zoronic there in the Twitch chat predicting that the fastest car will win. Well, that is a very good prediction there. But I think we might have wanted a driver name there from you, Zoronic, rather than just a silly prediction like that. But still, you are technically right. The fastest driver will win. As we see there, Mr. Fish from OTL supporting on his fellow teammate there of Jonathan Atkinson. Of course, Atkinson lining up P3 for this race, the British driver from OTL Racing. Indeed, that Bentley going to be looking strong in the race. So I suspect that Bentley is going to have some quite strong legs. And I think what Atkinson's target will be in this, particularly in the opening 10 minutes of the race, will be to try to hold on to that P3 and keep Kjellgren and Field behind him. Now, we do know with regards to Field that he typically likes running a high downforce setup. He's spoken to us about that in both of the post-race interviews we've had with him so far. And we know Field as well normally starts a little bit further down from the front, but then builds up the pace very quickly. So Field starting P5 right now. He's probably going to be looking to get himself up into P3 or P2 come the end of the first couple of laps. And I think it will be on Kjellgren and also Atkinson who are lining up on that second row to stop Field from coming through. I think if Atkinson can do that in particular, then Atkinson will set himself up very well going deeper into the race. Further down the order, of course, we've got Zuga in P16, the Porsche driver. We've seen a lot of Zuga up towards the front, but it hasn't worked out for the Swiss today from CHF Motorsport. And what can he do all the way back from P16? As we take a quick look on board, of course, he'll be thinking to himself right now, right, how do I get myself out of this position? I've got Lefloic beside me in P17, and we know that those two run very close together and are similar on pace. Indeed, to see them qualify alongside one another as we jump over to Lee Floic's car here, it is going to be interesting to see them together. But as we come back to the front of the field, it will be Voss who takes us away. The Frenchman leads us for the parade lap, and then we'll be getting underway with the race very shortly. As he just creeps off the line here, and we do see that Sarwar Drive's just taking a little bit longer to get off, but we've got Carbon at the front row here in P2, and indeed the Swede will be looking for the best possible run he can get come the run into turns 1 and 2, and I think that Aston Martin could be quite sprightly off the line, assuming that he's able to get his start in line with Voss. Of course, Voss will be trying to drop Carbon as quickly as possible and perhaps surprise him with the rolling start, but if Carbon can get a good run, perhaps he'll be the leader into turn 2, into the first chicane. We will wait and see about that. Is one of the big questions that we have to worry about, of course, as we look a little bit further down here. And if you go all the way down the order, we've got Mills in P23 here, and the Audi driver indeed when all is said and done, I think he'll be thinking to himself, right, what can I do to get myself up into that top 20? I think if he can get a top 20 today, Mills, he'll be doing it very well indeed, as everybody just catwalking their way around right now, just trying to get a little bit of temperature in the tyres. But of course, given the high temperatures here already, as we see, we've already gone up a degree centigrade, we're up to 47 degrees now trackside. That is a very high temperature, and these cars are going to be cooking. I can imagine being in the driver's overalls and the inside of the car, that's going to be an uncomfortable place to be, especially with these cars not having any air conditioning. As we can see there, we've got Chloridis there, Petros Chloridis, the Greek driver in P22, the McLaren driver making his way around right now. Indeed, in that cramped cockpit there, mid-engine rear drive, he's going to have the sound of that engine roaring every time he gets on the accelerator from the Assetto Corsa Racing team, making his way up towards Piratella right now, as he's got Mills alongside him just trying to do the warm-up there. We take a look all the way down towards the bottom of the order, however, you've got Loisinger here down in P28, and I think this BMW is going to be a little bit of a shocker to some of the drivers around him, very fast in the straights here. If Loisinger can nail his runs out of Ravazza each time going up towards the first chicane, he could be able to gain 1 or 2 places, or at least hold positions, because he will just simply have that straight line speed. The Dream Space Racing driver, of course, having picked perhaps one of the more difficult cars to master, given the fact it's seen as being quite weak in terms of the balance of performance, and really only set for specific tracks where power and straight line speed are key. But we'll wait to see what our BMW colleague is able to do. As we see, just a little bit ahead of him, 2 places ahead, is Jesse Monrose from BSP Racing, the Frenchman in the Bentley in P26, and we'll be looking to get a good result on the board today. It's been a difficult start to the season, but we will wait and see what he's able to achieve as we head back up the order right now, and we look back up to our P5 man, and of course Field, having had those good results, the win last time in particular, and denied the win, of course, at Catalonia, but the Swiss was feeling confident to an extent going into today, although it was the case, I don't think he was expected to pick up the win necessarily, but as they make their way through at Ravazza right now, it is the case that Voss is going to take us away as they go into the side-by-side formation. 2 by 2 they go, and we get ready to go racing. And it's lights out and away we go, and we can see that Voss getting the best possible run there. Atkinson actually bogging down a little bit, but you can see also Carl Baum having a difficult start as well. And the Bentley versus the Aston Martin, I think the Bentley is actually on the inside into turn 2 here as they make their way through the corner, and we can see that Atkinson has got ahead a little bit, but then Carl Baum comes back as behind. I think there has been a little bit of a kick-off further down the order here as they all make their way through it, and already a drive-through penalty for Lardier as they make their way then out towards the Villeneuve chicane. And of course our timing screens will be updated very shortly for you folks as everybody is making their way around the circuit right now, and we can see everybody has made it through, but we've already got a drive through for Lardier, perhaps out of position in the rolling start sequence, but a number of places being gained here. Delcomin up to P8 as we see Svensson has dropped a position down to P9, but looking back up front, Carl Baum nailing his start to stay in P2, but Atkinson was looking very strong at the start, and we can see that Voss being allowed to get away as Kellgren is holding on to P4 right now, has Joachim, and we can see that he's got Harikonen behind him, and behind him he's got Field. Harikonen getting up to P5, getting the jump on the Porsche driver, and he was saying he was looking to get the jump on the Porsche, and he's got the jump on probably the best Porsche driver there is in the championship so far, and that is Field behind him as they make their way through Aqua Minerale and head up towards the Alta chicane here. But it's been a relatively tame start in our top order, although I say that, and then we've got Harikonen versus Field here. Harikonen going defensive on the inside versus Field into Alta as we see that. I think that's Atkinson who's run off the circuit there, going through Alta. Indeed, somebody's had a run off, and as a result, and we've got a car that's been spun around on the Alta chicane, but we can see that Atkinson has definitely gained a position here as they make their way up, and those live timing screens will need to be adjusted very shortly, but we can see Atkinson has had a little bit of a difficult start to the race as he makes his way around the circuit right now, and meanwhile we have got Voss leading right now by the best part of almost 2 seconds, almost 3 seconds, as he makes his way across the timing line to complete lap number 1, and we're going to get those time screens very quickly updated for you, ladies and gentlemen. And there you go, as they are updated now, it will be the case that you'll be able to see all the live times from this point onwards. We've been able to fix that once again, and we can see Atkinson right now having a very difficult race. In fact, everybody's seemingly getting it wrong. We've got a Bentley going charging off the circuit there, and that was Apple going flying off the circuit. That was Joris Apple getting it very wrong indeed as he comes back on. Well, that wasn't Joris Apple, my apologies, but Joris Apple down into P11 right now. And I think it was him, in fact. It wasn't a Bentley, it was an Aston Martin going charging off the circuit. He's dropped all the way down to P11 after some fantastic movement up the order at the start here. But a lot of drivers getting caught out on the brakes and having to protect the brakes. They're getting too hot and then locking up as a result. As we can see at the front of your pack right now, you do have Voss just running away, and then Atkinson, well, he's in P3 right now, and he's got Kellgren ahead of him. And Kellgren, of course, having gained on everybody here. What the fact that we've seen a number of drivers go off, and it is Kellgren who is pulling away. As we see behind, you've got Harakona on the inside into Acque Minerali versus Field here, and Field trying to find a way through. The Ferrari drivers saying no all the same as they make their way there, charging out for Acque Minerali. But it is the case that the Porsche is looking very flexible indeed as they come charging out towards Alta here. We see Field looking for the move on the inside, but not able to find it as they all make their way through the sequence of corners here. And as the camera pans round, we go back to Field, as we can see, making his way now, charging up towards Ravazza, and he's got Faulkner behind him. And the Ferrari driver of Faulkner, of course, would love to be in a position to go for the strike here. As we see behind them, you've got Delcom and Bartel coming together, and Bartel just ahead the Grumpy Monkey Machine as Delcom gets his nose on the inside. There's contact, however, and fortunately for Bartel, he's reset in terms of he's pointed the right way by clipping the rear of Delcom's car. So I think he'll be swearing a little bit about the contact, and indeed he is flashing his lights, but at the same time I think he might also be silently whispering a thank you for the second bit of contact. But you can see the Grumpy Monkey Machine will definitely be feeling a little bit grumpy after that contact on lap number 2, and they go on to lap number 3, and the South African pushes on, of course, chasing after Delcom as they head up towards turn 2 here. And I think Delcom is going to be caught on the inside here, and I think he's perhaps lifted off the throttle a little bit to give the place back, knowing that it was an unfair move. But it's great to see that respect shown between the two drivers here, and they carry on all the same as they now make their way down towards the Villeneuve chicane. But meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see Lafloic is up into P12 right now, and indeed charging after the Aston Martin of Apple ahead of him, who is in P11 as they all make their way through the chicane. A little bit of dust being kicked up here, but everybody's settling now down into an order as we look a little bit further down the pack, and we see we've got Yun here in the Mercedes AMG, just under a little bit of pressure from the Starkist, who in turn has gotten a wiki trying to attack him right now. But we can see that the Dutchman Podium from Next Gen making his way up towards Piratella and having a good run there, but he's not able to find a way past Crew Camp right now. The other Grumpy Monkey Machine, the Grumpy Monkey 2 machine, as they make their way through. But you can see Young going a bit wide there through Piratella, and I think he will get a track limits warning for that. But of course, he will be given the ability to run wide a couple of times. They were allowed to run wide a couple of times for our drivers, but after that, then they'll be subject to time penalties. As we see ahead of him, we've got the battle kicking off there, and Carl Baum, of course, having that fantastic start, only to see it all fall apart. In P16 now is the Swede, as we see there, Saridis getting it very wrong going into Alta, and as a result, going into the wall and dropping it down the order as Carbon under pressure right now. And it is Gianpetro who goes to the inside here. He's going to have the inside line into Ravazza, into turn 13 they go, into left-hander, and I think Carbon recognises it, and it is a case that Gianpetro gains the place to P15. A tiny bit of contact on the rear of the car, but nothing major there as they both make their way out the corner and go on to another lap. Meanwhile, I can tell you a little bit further up the order right now that between Harakkonen and Field, well, Harakkonen has dropped Field by quite a margin, by 1.4 seconds, and it is the case that he is now chasing after Atkinson and Kellgren, and Kellgren has got the fast charge in Atkinson, only half a second off of him right now. He's getting a little bit closer as Atkinson. The Bentley starting to come into the race as we hear that Lardier has come into the pits from P33, the last of our runners. But as we look back up towards our order right now, we towards the back of our order, we can see Tardioli here, the French driver from Valkyrie Esport, in P24, making his way right now up towards the Villeneuve chicane here, and really in a battle with Horman ahead of him, Ingo Horman, as we see it behind Monroe's there under pressure from what looks to be Brandon Warren as they make their way through Villeneuve. And it is the case that Monroe's under an increasing amount of pressure as we look back from the Bentley, and it's the case that I don't think Warren's able to find the move this time. The BSP Racing driver holding on for the time being, but you can see the little queue of cars starting to form behind Monroe's here as they make their way up towards Piratella, and the Ferrari has dropped, of course, with its straight line speed deficit by comparison with the Bentley, albeit briefly, as they now make their way into Piratella. And you can see that Latsos now trying to find a way into this fight, but not able to find it for the time being, as further back there, we do also have what is Saridis, I believe, now trying to fight his way back up the order as the camera pans around. He's battling with Hill, the Ferrari in the left-hand side of your camera shot there. Hill holding on to the position for now into Aqua Minerale, going defensive, of course. That's going to cost all three of them, because you've also got the Audi there of De Klerk making their way all the way through towards turn at 15. Now they're heading up towards the auto chicane, and will it be an attack here from Saridis versus Hill? He's looking once again on the inside. He's looking aggressive, but he's not able to find a way through it, and actually costing himself a lot of time by doing that, and in fact costing himself so much time that De Klerk is now going to have a shot at him, probably down into Ravazza if he's got the momentum. But that Audi not as strong on the straight by comparison here, it looked like, and as a result Saridis able to hold on for the time being. As we jump back up our order towards our race leader, we can see it's still Mathis Voss, and the Frenchman is running away 4.3 seconds up the road as Kjellgren has pulled that gap to 8 tenths over Atkinson. Right now the battle for P2 goes on as Harakona meanwhile just looks on 1.7 seconds down, but he is 1.3 seconds ahead of the Swiss man in P5, our championship leader right now, Jesfield from CHF Motorsport. Behind him, of course, he's got Faulkner, and Faulkner, the Irishman, would love to have a shot at taking a position off the field and get himself some good points on the board today. But of course, we have got a long race to go. It's not the case that this race is due to conclude anytime soon. We've still got well over an hour of racing, and we've still got that all-important pit stop, of course, as we see Faulkner here chasing after Field, and the two of them pretty much inseparable right now as they make their way through the left-hander of Piratella and down towards Aqua Minerale once again. We look down to P14 meanwhile, and we can see that we've got Richard Jepp, the Mercedes AMG driver, the British driver, of course, Jepp, making his way down towards Aqua Minerale. And as we jump on board here, we're going to see running quite close behind the guys ahead of him as he makes his way through the right into left combination here. And ahead of him, he has, of course, got the Porsches of Lefloic and Zuger. And of course, we've seen this so many times that Lefloic and Zuger have been close together out on circuit. They are once again, and we can see the Mercedes, they're very heavy and nice and stable going through the auto chicane, as the two Porsches in front have to be more sensitive, whereas the AMG can literally just clatter over the curbs and as a result not feel as punished for it. We follow him down into Ravazza right now. We see no move from Lefloic on Zuger here, and I think the two Porsche drivers just using one of the pace car, as you see there. Yep, getting it very wrong under braking, and he goes a bit deep, but he does collect the car back together. That cost him a lot of momentum there, and of course he will experience the dirt on the tyres for a brief while until he burns that dirt off. It will be the case now. He's going to be a little bit more compromised through the corners for the time being, at least for the next lap, as Carl Bomb, who's down in P15, is looking to catch up and go on the attack. As we take a look in here with regards to our stewarding reports right now, we are getting some in from lap number 1. We will of course let you know what's happening with regards to penalties in due order, but we are now on to lap number 6 for most of our drivers as they're all heading onto it, and we can see that Carl Bomb in that P15 position, of course kicking himself most likely for what happened at the start, and he'll be wanting to get back up into the top 10 by the end of this. I'm sure the number 94 driver here in that Aston Martin from the Kaiju Racing team, as he heads up towards Tosa here, and in his sights first and foremost is Richard Jepp. As he goes through the left-hander here, he's got that AMG to deal with a little bit further up. However, we can see that we've got Apple here, the Aston Martin driver. He's on the attack versus Walker, the German versus Walker here as they go through the left-hander of Piratella and head down towards Aqua Minerale. Now, what do you do in this situation when you're Apple? Well, the McLaren is quite a strong car on the straights, not necessarily as strong perhaps as the Aston Martin, but it's still got a good amount of punch down the straights as well, and it's also very capable in the corners, but it can be a little bit unstable. So what Apple might want to do here is just put some pressure on Walker to try and get Walker to cook his tyres earlier. Now, of course, a lot of our drivers will most likely be running the brake ducts quite open in order to cool the brakes as much as possible. That costs them straight line speed, but given how high the temperatures are, you'll want to try and get the driver ahead of you to overdrive the car and get those temperatures higher than they need to be, and then they'll have to start back in the car. And we can see that Apple trying to stay as close to Ben Walker as possible as they make their way through turn number 17 there, and it is the case that Walker has got a face full of Aston Martin confronting him from behind, as we see the distinct GG driver here of Ben making his way through the right-hander of 19 onto another lap. He'll shortly go onto lap number 7. And we can see Apple right on his 6 right now as they make their way in towards the first chicane, and as they come up into left-hander at turn 2, there's no change so far. Apple getting closer and closer. The gap between them now only 2 tenths here, and you have to mention that Apple might try to go for a move if he feels he can get even closer, perhaps coming out of Tosa up towards Piratella if he's got the run, but it is going to be neck and neck as they make their way charging down towards the Villeneuve chicane right now. And this is where we should see Walker just open the gap a little bit, because he naturally has that rotation in the rear end of the car as he almost drops off the circuit there, as it's natural to do so. Run as wide as possible, of course, coming out of the Villeneuve chicane in order to use the full track limits, and that's where he's opened up the gap a little bit, as the gap has now opened up to half a second. And in fact, now it's the case that Apple will not be able to catch up towards Piratella, as that is where Walker's strong, coming out of Tosa and heading up into Piratella, and he can maintain the apex speed through here by comparison to Apple, has a little bit more native understeering the car in that Aston Martin. That is, of course, the trade-off between the two cars and the drivetrains in particular, and that's for Apple to close that gap up as quickly as possible, come the run to Alta and then down to Ravazza and onto another lap. But meanwhile, we look back up our order here, and we can see that in P4 right now, as we see there's a drive-through penalty for Atkinson, our P3 driver. Now, how has that happened, you may ask? Well, he is the number 21 driver here, and it is because of contact between himself and car 94 on lap number 1. It's considered to be avoidable contact at turn 14. So that's the Alta chicane, and well, if you're wondering who car 94 is, ladies and gentlemen, that is Pontus Carlbom, and that is where we saw Carlbom go all the way down the order to where he is currently now. It was contact at the Alta chicane, and so as a result, Carlbom, whilst he won't be able to get the places back or just give them back to him, it will be the case that we will see Atkinson drop down the order. So that's the contact that set off the chain of events that we saw on the opening lap. As we see right now, as Atkinson is in the pits to take that drive through, everybody's going to gain a place, of course, and the majority of drivers will, but meanwhile Carlbom will still have to fight his way back up the order to get into that top 10 Will Pontus as he makes his way towards turn 2 on lap number 8. He looks at a move here versus Jep, and it's not going to be the case that he's able to do it. He's not close enough, but he continues all the same onto the rest of the lap here, and looking very, very fighty is the Aston Martin driver versus the Mercedes driver. But what does this mean for our race leader right now? Well, Voss, meanwhile, he's a good 5.7 seconds up the road, or 5.8 seconds up the road from Kjellgren, and what the fact we've seen the disappearance of Atkinson from our front runners, Kjellgren will have some pressure taken off him, of course, in P2 right now, where Atkinson should be right next door to him effectively. But meanwhile, the big question will be the fact that Field has actually made his way out the order here. We haven't seen that on camera, but he's got himself up into P3, he's past Harikonen here, and now he will be chasing down Kjellgren and Voss over the due course of the race here. We've still got just over an hour to go here, but already Field are making those gains. And remember what we said at the start, Field doesn't normally start on the front row, but what he does, he starts towards the front and makes the places rapidly in the race, and it's the setup on the car which is giving him the ability to make this ground, that high downforce setup that he's talked about. And we can see behind him Harikonen right now in P4, the Frenchman running a strong race here, but I think it's the case right now he's just sizing up the distance of the race and thinking about preserving the car more than going for the attack so early on, as Bartel is only 1.2 seconds behind right now. And we can see further back we've got Faulkner under an increased amount of pressure here from Delcomin, and as the Irishman goes on to another lap, it's going to be the Belgian who looks to try and go around the outside, but he's just got a little bit of legs versus the Porsche here as he makes his way onto the next lap. But will it be the case? Will Delcomin make a move to the inside in towards the first chicane? You can see Faulkner going defensive initially, but now the Porsche comes out, he looks at the move, but he's not close enough under braking here. But these two so close at the moment. You can see behind, you've got Svensson, you've got Walker, and you've got Apple all chasing after. You've literally got from P6 to P10 separated by only 2 seconds on circuit, if that, and it could be the case that at any moment there is a trade between them. As we see, looking at back in our chat right now, we've got Neil Quirk saying that asking Millsy to make that Audi talk. Well, we'll take another look at the Audi driver in a short while, but meanwhile we can see Delcom getting it a little bit wrong coming out of the Villeneuve chicane, and as a result the Belgian there under a bit more pressure from Svensson, but Svensson still in that P8 position. The American driver not able to find a way through right now, and having to be wary of the fact that Walker is just behind the McLaren driver, who's been able to get some distance on Apple over the last couple of laps, and as a result of that it will be the case that Apple just watches on. And when you're looking at Joris right now, Joris Apple here, the German driver from Apple Racing, as he makes his way in towards Aqua Minerale, and I think he's just going to be biding his time here and thinking, right, I can't catch Walker naturally through my pace on circuit right now. Walker's too strong for me, but what I can do is stay there and wait for the guys ahead to fight, because I've got a pack of 4 cars that I can use as my pacemakers. As he makes his way in to the Alta chicane and over the apex he goes, and if he can stay in this position right now, he could gain some places should the guys ahead of him just get a little too aggressive. As we see behind right now, we do have Zuga and Lifloik still running together, literally nose to toe, the Swiss and also the driver behind him, the Frenchman Lifloik, as they make their way down towards Ravazza once again. And these two are inseparable. We've seen this time and time again. It's fantastic to see, of course, that they're running so close, and you have to imagine that if they're using one another as pace cars right now, when will they go on the offensive? Surely it'll be at the end of the race, as Carlbom is catching up to the back of these guys right now. He is in P13 right now. You can see him just a little bit further back in the camera shot as we jump to Pontus' car here, and the Swede making that recovery drive down in P13 and continuing to push on as we see all of our drives going on to lap number 10. But meanwhile, in that battle for P6, we see that Faulkner still under pressure from the Porsche Delcomen. The Belgian behind not able to find a way through right now as we ride on board and look backwards from the Ferrari driver here. And it is one of those situations where I think for Faulkner, he's got to be aware of the fact the more pressure he's under here, the harder it is going to get going deeper and deeper into the race. Because, of course, the car, in particular, the brakes will start to really overheat. And we can see that Delcom flashing his lights. They're trying to get into Faulkner's head as they make their way up into Piratella here. Going into turn 9, the left-hander as he goes into the corner right now, and Delcom getting closer and closer. So there's a 5-second penalty for Delcom there, and we're just going to find out what that is for, ladies and gentlemen, as that is going to completely take away Delcom's momentum. In fact, that's a 50. Oh, goodness me, and what has happened to Faulkner here? Faulkner's got it very wrong, and as a result, he's spun. He's got to get the car back on circuit. I think that's just heavy under braking. There was no contact, but I think Faulkner just went heavy on the brakes into turn 13, and the rear of the car just simply slid away. So Faulkner's got, he's been fortunate. He's come back into P10, but he's lost the ground to the battle for P6, and now he's got Zuga and Lefloic would love to catch up to him, and that, I think Faulkner just stepped it a little too far down to Ackerman right, and perhaps those temperatures starting to get to the car a little bit there, and perhaps the pressure of the Belgian behind just getting to him as well, as we see him make his way down towards Ravazza once again here. But now he's going to have the two drivers behind the two Porsches, and Lefloic in particular will be smiling as Marvin will be saying to himself, right, I've got two pace cars in front of me now, I can use them to pull me along, and I've got a double tow versus Carl Bond behind. But as we look to our sheets here, what we're being told here, it's with regards to avoidable contact, where Delcom are getting a 10-second penalty, where there was contact between himself and also car 19. And meanwhile, looking back at what's happening, we've got a battle here for Zuga versus Lefloic as they go into the opening chicane here. But Zuga still holding on for the time being. But I think Lefloic's now trying to get the message through to Zuga. Right, I've been running with you for so long. It is time for me to get the move. He's going to look to the inside into the Villeneuve chicane here. Into the left-hander they go. He's there on the inside, but it switches back to the right-hander. It's very close. He almost touches the side. He goes to the switchback, however, up into Tosa, but this will mean he's on the outside, but he will have the full width of the circuit to play with, whereas Zuga will not as they come through the corner, but he goes a little bit wide and drifts, and as a result, Carl Bomb now is looking for the way on the inside here as they make their way up towards Piratella, but it's the case that Carl Bomb has to back it off. He's not able to find a way alongside Lefloic, and of course, I think backing out there may be the more sensible option, so you're going to cost yourself a lot of momentum going down to Aqua Minerale, and the guys in front will just run away with things as they all make their way into Aqua Minerale once again here, indeed keeping it nice and clean between one another. But you can imagine this battle for P11 is going to kick off at any moment, as we see Zuga definitely feeling the pressure from the fellow Porsche behind him as they make their way out towards the Alta chicane once again, and it is the case right now. Zuga really feeling as though Lefloic's got that pace and he doesn't want to let Lefloic through. I think Zuga thinks that holding on to P11 right now is ideal for him, and he can neutralise the pace of the Porsche behind him and use Lefloic to hold Carl Bomb back, and you can see that Carl Bomb making his way a little bit towards the inside into Ravazza, but he squeezed a bit, and in fact in the end it is the case that no contact between the two of them, and instead Lefloic goes wide into turn 17, and that cost him the position. Carl Bomb up into P12 and continuing to make his way up the order as Pontus making that recovery drive as he heads onto another lap here, and we hear that it is the case that Lefloic as well with a 10-second penalty here, and well, we'll find out more about how that happened very shortly, folks. But looking back up front right now, I can, oh goodness me, in fact we're not going to look back up in front because we can see Lefloic under attack from Gian Petro here. The two Porsche drivers from Valkyrie Esport making their way. Oh goodness me, Lefloic hits the curb at turn 3 too high, and as a result goes out onto the gravels. The rear is over rotated, but meanwhile Ugo Gian Petro, the Frenchman, now up into P13. He's got crew camp all over the back of him now, and some of our drivers now starting to just make little mistakes as we see Gian Petro go a little bit wide there out of turn 5 and heading up into Tosa. But indeed it is becoming a case right now where everybody experiencing a little bit of pressure, and it's starting to get to those temperatures as well so high, and we've also got a brief bit of wind on the circuit as well, which may just be disorientating some of the drivers in terms of their runs into the corners. But we can see that Gian Petro gaining, Willa Flight did not. But crew camp getting ready to attack is the South African as they make their way into Aqua Minerale once again. Into 12, 13 and 14 they go, and you can see just how the Bentley is all over the back of the Porsche, but he goes a bit deep there into 13 as we look ahead, and we see that Zuga under attack from Carlbom as they make their way into the Alta chicane, and the camera pans around. They make their way through the corner, and Carlbom all over the back there as Zuga actually goes wide, runs wide of track limits. He'll get a warning for that. I don't think he's going to get a penalty straight away, but if he does that enough times he will be getting a penalty. It'll be a time penalty be at least 5 seconds as they make their way into Ravatta once again. But you could see when we ride on board here with Carbon just how much pace he has versus the driver ahead of him. As you ride on board with the Swede right now, currently in P12 and building up that pace, coming out of the final corner onto another lap and just charging afterwards the Porsche. He's going to have the momentum here. Will he look for the move? He's building that speed. As they come down towards turn number 1, he's got the run. He's going to look to the inside. He's going to look to the outside for the turn 2, in fact. And as they make their way in, he's going to be going into the corner. And will he be able to sweep it around the outside? He tries it. There's a little bit of space. And he gets it done. Very brave there, Carl Bomb. Zuga giving him the space, showing him the respectful racing room. A brilliant move. And the Swede now up into P11, so long as he can hold on to the position into Villeneuve. And I think he's got it done. So Carl Bomb, the Aston Martin driver, making the recovery still up into P11 and fighting on for the P10 and upwards positions, as we see Voss meanwhile leading by almost 10 seconds over Kellgren. Kellgren here starting to feel a little bit of pressure from field, as we hear that Bartel in fact has made his way up into P4, so we haven't seen that on camera, but Ross Bartel, the lead Grumpy Monkey machine, the South African, up into that P4 position, as we see at the foreground then the battle for P2, and Bartel only the best part of 2.4 seconds off of that battle for P2 as they make their way then up in towards the Auto Chicane and through it, and Harikonen just dropping a little bit down the order right now. I think it may be the case that the Ferrari just feeling a little bit of the overall wear and tear of the race, and also Harikonen nursing that car by comparison with perhaps the drivers around him who are going a little bit more aggressive right now. But we did say that the Bentley was a very strong car in the race trim conditions compared to the more qualifying orientated cars, as say the Porsche per se, and also perhaps the Ferraris. But we are seeing right now that Bartel doing a very strong job there as we look back up to our battle for P2, and we can see Field here in the centre of your camera, and we've got just ahead of him we have got Kellgren there, the two of them inseparable in terms of that time, albeit Field the best part of 1/10 ahead in terms of overall 1 lap pace there on the previous lap by comparison, as they make their way then through the first chicane once again, going through turns 3 and 4 coming up right now, the left-hander, and then heading down towards 5 and 6 here, as we see Delcom still with that 10-second penalty that will be added to the time at the end of the race, unless he burns it of course in the pits as well. He's allowed to do that in his pit slot, a 10-second penalty which he'll be able to burn in there should he so desire to do so, as we see there that just Bartel going a little bit wide coming out of turn number 6, coming out of the second chicane, but Field and Kellgren staying on of course and continuing to push up the hill on to Piratella. Now looking over towards our chat, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you still tuning in, we've been able to get the time boards of course sorted, and as they make their way all the way down towards turns 12, 13 and 14, we can see Field continue to push on all the same here as they go through that right-hander, and he's not able to get it done quite this time, but you can imagine that with a little bit, oh, he's looking for the move. In fact, he had the momentum there, but Kellgren just ahead enough going into Alta, but definitely Field trying to put that pressure on Kellgren and trying to lull him into a full sense of impending doom, and in fact put him into a mistake right now, but not to be, whereby Kellgren are doing a very solid job at his jockey, just holding on to the position right now in P2. Now in terms of looking a little bit further down the order right now, what I can tell you is one driver who's having to make a recovery effort right now, of course, with that drive-through penalty for the contact between himself and Carl Bomb at the start of the race. It's Jonathan Atkinson in P18. He's currently chasing after Yun. That's Neil Yun ahead of him in the Mercedes AMG that just went through the camera shot, and we can see now coming up towards Alta here, it is the case that Atkinson is the best part of 3 seconds down on Yun, but closing that gap over time. He's closing it by a considerable amount. In fact, on the previous lap alone, he closed the gap up by about 2 seconds. I mean, he'll be looking to make that recovery drive, as we do see more time penalties for some more drivers here. Ingo Horman as well picking up a 10-second penalty, and Monrose with a 15-second penalty. We've got Horman here, the German driver, down in P23 as he's trying to find his way up the order, and he's going to be trying to make a recovery drive. He's almost off the back there as we've got Loisinger and also Koloridis just ahead of him. Loisinger in the BMW, Koloridis in the McLaren of course, as they make their way through. But we come back up to our battle here for P2, and we can see once again Field all over the back of Kellgren. You're looking at Kellgren right now as they make their way through at Piratella, and it is the case that there is no change between the two right now. And I think Field might be thinking to himself, well, if I can't get past Kellgren by forcing him into a mistake, then perhaps I just need to do it through the strategy. Perhaps I can calm it down and save a little bit of fuel, alternatively do some other magic later on in the race. You can see that Field gets a really strong run out of Aqua Minerale compared to Kellgren, but Kellgren just has enough space on the circuit and enough of a run up to Alta to stay ahead and use the straight line as acceleration of the Aston Martin in his favour. So that's really the trade-off. We can see the handling strengths of Field's car, but we can also see how Kellgren just has that acceleration advantage and it's keeping him safe for the time being. But of course, one little mistake or one little failure to get on the power as soon as he'd like, and perhaps it could be a very different story as they go on to very shortly lap number 16, just coming to the end of lap 15. And behind them, of course, you've got Bartel, who is very slowly catching up to these two. The gap between Bartel and Field a couple of laps ago was approximately 2.4 seconds. That gap is now 1.5 seconds. It is closing slowly, but you can imagine it may be the case that a little bit of battle, a little bit of nip and tuck between Field and Kellgren is just giving Bartel the confidence to catch up right now. Alternatively, it's the case that it's unleashing some pace that he was saving a bit earlier on as they make their way down towards the Villeneuve chicane once again. We take another look down our order. We've got Delcom here with that 10-second penalty, of course, but in a little bit of a land of his own right now. 4 seconds ahead of P7, but also 4.5 seconds down on Harricone in P5. I think if Delcom can continue to expand the gap between himself and Walker, then that will do him very good in terms of that time penalty. We can see that the battle for P6 has calmed down a little bit. They're all separated now in terms of from what was Delcom down to Faulkner. Faulkner at the rear camera shot. We're looking at Svensson, of course, in P9, and ahead of her is Apple in P8. As then we've got Zuger still holding on to that P11 position right now, and Zuger, of course, under that huge pressure from both Crew Camp and GM Petro. But it's the case that the Swiss driver not phased by it. In fact, Zuger showing a very strong sense of form here in just being able to drive the car safely and securely and keeping it consistent, and he's being rewarded by holding on to the positions, albeit you can see just how much GM Petro is so much closer, and Zuger goes wide out of Piotella once again, and if he continues to do that, it definitely will be a time penalty being applied to the driver as he goes into Acca Minerale here, and I think he might be starting to head towards a little bit of cliff on the tyres because you can see how he's struggling to make some of the corners and the car's just running a bit deep through the corners, and it's keeping him alive right now, but he won't be able to keep doing it forever because if he does run wide enough, he will be picking up those track limits warnings, and of course GM Petro may have a few words to say to that to the stewards as well with regards to it, as we see it behind Crew Camp just sizing up the two Porsche drives. The Bentley are looking rather ravenous behind and rather chunky by comparison, as we see the South African making his way in towards Rivatsa once again there and just biding his time. But meanwhile up front, I can tell you that Kellgren is still under attack from Field. There's no change between these two. We are waiting to see if there is a mistake from Kellgren or Field does get a better run out of one of the corners, but no change between them as we look a little bit further down the order right now, and we can see Mills down in P28. We've still got 31 drivers running out of our starting order of 34, but Mills, in fact, he's in P28 here, making his way through the auto chicane. He's got de Klerk behind him, the other Audi driver here in this battle for P28. It hasn't been a solid day for either of them so far. In fact, Mills making a bit of a mistake out of Walter there, and on the inside line here, so we're going to see de Klerk go for a move. He's going to look to the outside into Rivatsa here, and Mills is going to squeeze him as much as he possibly can, but de Klerk goes all the way around here. He's brave on the brakes, but he goes a bit deep, and in fact, Mills able to hold on to the position for the time being, but these two are battling, of course, and Hill trying to get in the mix there. Tony Hill in P30 just behind us. We've got the two Audis in the foreground, and they are continuing to battle their way onto lap number 17 for these guys. They come across that line, of course. Mills trying to take that tight line across the start-finish line with de Klerk going all the way around. He's going to have the inside into turn 2 as de Klerk here. Mills giving him the space on the inside, and I think de Klerk has got the move done. Up the inside he goes into the chicane, and will it be the case that Mills is able to come out? No, he's not able to through turn 3, and he loses the position. De Klerk up to that position right now as they make their way around onto the rest of the lap, and we can see that Hill now trying to chase after the pair of them, and of course Hill's now got to get past Mills first and foremost before he tries to go after de Klerk as they come out of the Villeneuve chicane here and head on towards Tosa. But meanwhile, further up that order, once again, I can tell you that Kellgren is still just ahead of Field. The gap is constantly oscillating around that 2 to 4 tenths region. It closes down, then it opens up a little bit, and we can see once again Bartel now falling back a little bit. He was closing up. He was 1.3 seconds at the closest approach point, but now it's the fact that he's a little bit further back there, and now I think he's just biding his time. I think Bartel, I should say, he's just biding his time and recognising he doesn't need to battle here. Instead, if he plays the long game, he's going to pick up these positions potentially by just playing it smart as he continues to wait and get into a position to go on the offensive. Of course, the pit window is due to open probably within the next 5 to 7 minutes, and we'll be keeping our eyes out for that. But these guys, of course, up in the battle for P2 right now, as we see Saridis, meanwhile, just crossing our timeline as we look at our commentary box there in P19 and just in a quiet space at the moment. 6.3 seconds down on Yun. At the same time, 4.5 seconds ahead of Tardioli here in P19. And to give you an idea in terms of relative places, we can see that Coloridis, the Greek driver here in P21, chasing after Tardioli for that final position within the top 20. We can see the McLaren driver under an increasing amount of pressure from Loisinger, and Loisinger, in fact, having a better race today. And you can see that the BMW behind him looking large in the rearview mirror as they make their way through Villeneuve. And we note, looking back here, Loisinger loses the pace going through the corners, but you'll see as they come out of Toaster here, watch how that BMW, as soon as they get into a straight line acceleration zone, that BMW will come up very fast, simply because it's got the power versus the McLaren, and it begins to build up the speed. Now, of course, it's not a long run up towards Piratella, but you can see that Loisinger is not being dropped. In fact, he gains a little bit before we get to the braking zone for Piratella, and then he understeers a little bit because of the weight distribution of that BMW, and that's where Coloridis gets away, but it'll close up whenever we have a long straight to concern or a power zone, and we'll see another power zone very shortly coming out of Aqua Minerale here, albeit we haven't got the longest of runs heading up towards the Alta chicane. As ahead of him, of course, he's got Tardioli, and he is trying to catch up to Tardioli is Coloridis as they make their way through the final chicane on the circuit for what is the 18th time of asking. Now they charge all the way down to Ravazza once again. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see that Field has dropped a little bit away from Kellgren over the course of this lap and the previous one. In fact, I think at this point it may be the case that Field is starting to feel the heat coming through the car a little bit too much here. We've got 43 minutes of the race to go, so that pit window is looking to open very soon. And of course, our battlers for P2 are now 8.5 seconds almost down on Voss. Voss right now just making his way around the circuit. He's not even on camera to give you an idea. That's how far ahead he is as they make their way through Aqua Minerale. But we can see that the battle for P2 still looming there. And as for the battle for P6, well, Walker a little bit further back from Delcom at this point in time. In fact, there's a 3-second gap. Walker here in P7, you're looking at him, the McLaren driver, the highest McLaren driver placed at the moment out on circuit. Delcom just making his way out of Aqua Minerale, as you see Walker's now doing so as well. Delcom at the front of your picture, that's the gap between our P6 and P7 man, and behind Walker, of course, is Apple in P8 as the pit window now opens. So it opens, and we've got 10 minutes for all of our drivers to jump in and take their mandatory pit stop. And who will be the first to flinch? Of course, that is the big question for everybody as we see our drivers continuing to push on. Svensson in P9 right now has got Faulkner looming large in a rearview mirror, and the American will be thinking with Faulkner, okay, what do I do here with Faulkner? Do I give him the opportunity to undercut me, or do I essentially undercut him by pitting early? As we see, there is a drive-through penalty there for Richard Jepp. What has happened to the British driver here as he makes his way down towards Ravazza here? We're just going to check in with our stewards as to why Jepp has got the penalty here. This is for the number 65 car. I believe this is for an incident between himself and number 37 in the race at some point. So number 37 car, and that is as a result the drive-through penalty. It's for an unsafe rejoin, in fact, as we see that Jepp jumps into the pits here, and of course, this will be a drive-through. This will not be a pit stop permitted, so he'll have to do the pit run twice here as he comes in. So not a good day for Jepp, and it has been a difficult one. It is a relatively narrow circuit here at Imola, of course, as we see Voss having a field day of it by comparison. But already, in terms of pit stops, we have got Bartel into the pit. So Bartel being the first of our drivers in that battle for P2 to pit. Meanwhile, we can see that Field is also running out on circuit, continues around circuit, and we've also had a pit stop, we should point out, from at the time what is our driver of Kellgren. So both Bartel and also Kellgren pitting, and as a result of that, both of them pitting, we can see Fielder's been released as Delcom now makes his way up the order here. And I think Delcom, they're getting a good run coming out of the corner, and we can see up in P3 here as they all make their way down towards the Alta chicane here. And I think Harakona might have had a bit of an off there, because it's the fact he's dropped down the position. He was quite a way ahead of Delcom, so Harakona has made a mistake. That should be pointed out, and has dropped a position as the Frenchman as a result of that mistake. It's happened at Aqua Minerale. And I believe it might have been Harakona. It was another Ferrari driver who definitely made a mistake at the same place. But that's why he's dropped down the order, and he's now behind Delcom as he makes his way through Ravazza once again. And he has got Ben Walker chasing after him, of course, as they make their way then out. And you can see that Harakona jumping into the pits, recognising that the tyres have gone too far, and he now needs to bring them in. As we see, meanwhile, that Walker stays out there here, deciding to go for the undercut, or just simply going long as it used to be known, as he makes his way onto lap number 21 here. And the McLaren driver doing a very strong job right now of just keeping the pace together and keeping it consistent. As he drifts a little bit there, and you can see the tyres just starting to hit a little bit of a cliff, as behind him he has got Neil Jean down in P29, of course, a back marker at this point, as they make their way around the circuit and head down towards Villeneuve. Does Walker here. But looking down right now, let's take a look at where our guys who have already pitted have come back out. We can see, to give you an idea here, folks, That we have got, if you just give us 2 seconds, we've got Kellgren, who is currently down in P22. He was one of the first to pit. He pitted actually at the same time as Bartel, and Bartel has come out 4 seconds down the road from Kellgren. So Bartel lost a little bit of time in the pits, but the two of them deciding to take that early pit stop by comparison with our race leaders. And as a result of that, it means that essentially Kellgren, who was P2 at the time of pitting, he'll be looking to recover, but not being held up whilst everybody else is in the pits. We will wait and see what happens, as Harakona is in the pits right now, and we can see that Kellgren has come out ahead of Harakona, so he's not going to be held up behind the Ferrari driver here, but he is being held up a little bit behind Jep right now. Jep holding on to that position after taking what was, I believe, that drive-through penalty. So this is not ideal for Kellgren, because he's got to find his way past the Mercedes driver out on the circuit. He's going to look for the move here into Villeneuve. Oh, and it was very close indeed, but not able to get his way in there. And it is the fact he's trying to just look as aggressive as he possibly can. As we can see, he looks at the move up into Toaster here, and as a result, I think Jep's gone a little... Oh, goodness me, and there's contact between the two of them, and Jep is spun, and Kellgren will know that that is a disaster there, as we see that Bartel catches up, and that's the tiniest little bit of contact there between the two of them. But I think Kellgren at this point will be thinking to himself, that's not good news for me. That might be a visit to the stewards, as we see that Bartel, meanwhile behind him, chasing after him, and Bartel is definitely going to gain because of this. He will gain massively, as GM Petro's got a stop and go 30-second penalty, and I'm not sure what that's for, ladies and gentlemen. We will find out. I think that might be for track limits or something else along those lines, but GM Petro with the stop and go 30-second penalty for car 23. That is a shocker to the eyes there. And well, he did pick up a drive-through penalty earlier on in the race, but that is not what he's got here for. It's a stop and go, and we will find out for you as soon as we possibly can. But Bartel right now pushing on, and he's got Kellgren only just up the road. But meanwhile, in terms of our race leaders, we've got Delcom in the pits right now, Romain Delcom. As we see, that's Ben Walker starting to come out of the pits. Now, will he be able to come out ahead of Bartel? That's the big question. Well, we can see you've got Kellgren there, and we've got Bartel coming out of the final corner with 5 minutes to the pit window to go here, and I think actually Ben Walker could find himself just coming out very close to him here. In fact, he's not going to come out ahead of him as Bartel and Kellgren both go past, but it is very close, and Walker timing this pit stop very well, in fact, because he's only going to come out approximately 6 seconds down on these guys, and these guys were battling for P2 at the time, and Walker is going to gain considerably because of this. In fact, so much so I think Walker is going to be up to P5 once all the pit stops restore the order, once all the pit stops are done, of course. But meanwhile, we can see that our race leaders are into the pit. So Voss is into the pit, as is Field, as we look out of our commentary box right now, and we can see Field coming in. So that means that Faulkner, even Faulkner, the Irishman here, continuing his way around. He does have that mandatory pit stop. Will he go one more lap, or will he decide to pit at this point and react to the fact he does come into the pits? So now it will be the case of with Atkinson running around in P4, but of course Atkinson did have that penalty earlier on to take. Our driver who could potentially, well, it'll be a case, I think Voss is going to come back out in the lead if he gets the pit stop right this time. That'll be the big question on his mind. But it will be the case now. Where will Atkinson come out in relation to everyone? As we see that Voss currently sat in the pits, and it will be Atkinson who I think is going to take the race lead for the time being, but he will have to be aware of the fact that he will be due a pit stop at some point, and he's only got 3.5 minutes to do it, so he'll have to do it at the end of the next lap most likely. But what that does mean is that Voss, who's currently still in the pits, we see that both him and also Field have been released there. Now the big question will be, where is Kellgren and Bartel in all this? Well, Bartel and Kellgren are both making their way down to Ravazza right now, so Voss is going to be clear of them entirely. And what about Field by comparison? Well, we see they both make their way through the corner right now. Well, Voss has already come out of the pit. Field is making his way out of the pits right now, but I think he's going to be secure here. I do not think Field's under any pressure as he makes his way out of the pit limiter, and he's onto the circuit once again. And the gap is, as we can see, that Kellgren coming across the line here. We'll see that the gap between Field and Kellgren is only now 4 seconds. So that's how much it's closed up, albeit with Kellgren having that contact. That's what's cost him the time, because Kellgren was ahead of Field when he came into the pits, but that contact between himself and Richard Jebb, I believe at the time it was, and also the fact that they had the little bit of an incident there, and the fact that Kellgren was held up has meant that things have gone this way, and as a result he has lost the position to Field. He has Field now gaining P3 and continuing to press on. Of course, Voss in P2 currently, but we know that he will re-inherit the lead once Atkinson comes into the pits, and Atkinson must come into the pits at the end of this lap most likely, otherwise he will be subject to disqualification for not taking his pit stop. And then again, he may be able to squeeze in one more lap if he feels very daring, but he's going to have to nail that lap because he's only going to have probably about a 3-second window to do it. No, he comes into the pits, does Atkinson, and we'll see that Voss, making his way out towards the auto chicane right now, will re-inherit the lead in very short order. So as we see him making his way around here, our race leader, who is the best part of what is 8.6 seconds ahead of second place man, we believe, once the pit stops have all reset the positions of field. Voss just leading this one right now, and with 35 minutes to go, doing a very good job is the Intruder Racing team driving the number 222 car of just running this one, and there's been no mistakes from Voss this time around. The third time of asking, he has not made any mistakes. He's still got a long way to go. Commentator's curse, of course, is a thing, but we are hopeful that Voss will not see the mistakes occur again, as he's flashing a back marker ahead of him right now, but he comes through to take the race lead, as we see Field coming across to take P2 back right now, and as he makes his way across the timeline to go onto lap 24, we can see that Atkinson's still in the pit. Meanwhile, Kjellgren here, he's just making his way down towards turn number 2 as well. So I think Atkinson's actually going to gain quite a bit from the pit stop window, but it will be the case that he's still going to find himself battling for the lower half of P10 and upwards, as we can see that Kjellgren just holding on right now, but he's got Bartel behind him, and he does have a little bit of a steward's investigation hanging over him for that contact at Tosa earlier on between himself and Richard Jepp. But we will wait out and see what happens, of course, a little bit later on in the race, as we see Atkinson coming out the pits here, and in fact Atkinson down in P12 now, so he has gained a little bit of time compared to everyone else. He's actually come out between Delcom and Zugo. Of course, Delcom having the time penalty in the pits, that's why he's come out behind Atkinson, but Atkinson making ground still, and he's still got the best part of 30 or so minutes in order to gain some more positions. But what I can tell you right now, if you want something absolutely fantastic, you're going to see a pack of 3 Ferraris pretty much running nose to tail. Faulkner, Harakona and Svensson all coming out the pits together effectively once it's all said and done, and we can see that it's Faulkner at the head of this pack, the Irishman ahead of Harakona the Frenchman, and Svensson the American behind, and then you've got Joris Appel who is behind them in the Aston Martin. So who is going to be the lead Ferrari who brings it home today, the head of the Ferraris? Well, at the moment it's Faulkner, but you can see that Harakona looking very aggressive indeed and trying to ingress his way into a position as the pit window now closes, and it's a case that we are back to full attack racing for the rest of the race, as behind you can see that we have got Apple just going a little bit wide there out of all to the German driver in P9. He's at the back of this pack right now, and effectively he's in the nicest of the positions because he's in the popcorn position of being able to see whether the guys ahead decide to fight too much, and if they do, will they cost one other time, and can Joris pick up places because of the fighting. But we see in this battle for P6 right now that Harakona getting ever closer to the back of the fellow Ferrari of Faulkner. We're looking at Faulkner, and we jump on board with Harakona as he looks for a potential move going into turn number 1. You're right on board with his dashboard right now of the Frenchman Kevin here, making his way up towards the first chicane. He looks to the inside briefly, trying to get in the mirrors of Faulkner, trying to distract him, but now he'll find a move. But you can see that Faulkner made a major mistake there, and Harakona all over the back of him, so that little feint to the inside was cleverly placed, and it's caused Faulkner to make a small mistake as they look into Villeneuve. He tries it again, but I don't think Faulkner's going to fall for it twice. As you can see, Faulkner carrying a lot more speed into the Villeneuve chicane by comparison with Harakona there as they make their way out towards Tosa right now, and he's not close enough to effect a pass into Tosa here, but you can really feel the fact that Harakona is getting closer and closer. He's breathing down Faulkner's neck, and as he does so going up into Piratella here, will it be the case that Faulkner can withstand the pressure, or will Harakona be too much for the Irishman as they go through Piratella? In fact, it looks like Harakona getting a little bit of a bad run there through Pirito, so he's got to be aware of the fact in that dirty that Ferrari so close in front of him, it can cause the car to understeer a little bit more than what he'll be used to as they make their way out of Acque Minerale and head up towards the auto chicane. He falls back a little bit here, but the battle rages on as behind them we do of course have Svensson being reeled in a little bit here by Apple. So we've got one Ferrari battling with another, and then we've got a drive-through penalty for Kjellgren, and I think that is going to be the drive-through for the incident between himself and what was Richard Jepp at the time at Tosa, and Kjellgren will be absolutely furious with that one as we see that Svensson right now making her way I should say through Vatsa, and as they come through the corner here, Kjellgren into the pits immediately in response to that drive-through. So he's going to drop down to the bottom part of the top 10 as we just check our notes here, and it will be the case that the drive-through is for that incident. and that has been confirmed to us. So we can see here that Svensson under a lot of pressure from Apple. He's going to look to the inside, he's going to look to the outside. In fact, now coming into turn 2, will he be able to do it around the outside into the chicane, or will the throw be too much? The close took over, but it's the case in the end that Apple has the confidence to go all the way round, and Svensson made it as difficult as possible. But the Aston Martin is through and up into P6, and Apple really pushing on right now. As we see behind, I think Harikkonen's had a major off, because what on earth has happened there? We've got Harikkonen, who's in the mix here. And in fact, he's been able to get past Svensson there. That was a very odd change of positions, but we can see, I think Harikkonen's had an off somewhere. There's contact on the back there of Apple's car, and as a result, Apple is knocked wide here, and we've got a freeway battle heading up towards Piratella here, and we can see that we've got the Ferrari of Harikkonen on the inside, and we've got Apple on the outside here as they go through the corner, and oh, there was a little bit more of a contact there on the inside, the rear inside panel of Apple's car, and Harikkonen backs off immediately. I think there has been a mistake from the French Ferrari driver, and as a result now, he's trying to carve his way back up into the battle with Faulkner, who's disappeared off up the road. We didn't see what happened to Harikkonen, just that he's dropped down here, but he's definitely now seen a little bit of the red come through, and as a result, he's really trying to push on here, but Apple does not want to just simply let him through, having gained the place on Svensson through that brave move around the outside into the opening chicane here. Now Apple wants to hold off both of the Ferraris, and you can see in the rear view picture, we've got Crew Camp catching up to this battle for P6, and doing so in a very gradual motion at the moment, but it is the case that the Grumpy Monkey machine of Crew Camp looking very strong late on in the race and pushing on all the same, as they make their way through Ravazza once again and head on to what will be a lap number 27. But meanwhile, looking back to our battle for P6, we can see that Apple in a comfortable position right now. He's been able to get a little bit of a gap over Harikkonen, and Svensson just further behind. Meanwhile, I can tell you that up front in our battle for the race lead, well, it's not really a battle for the race lead right now, with Voss being the best part of 8.5 seconds ahead of Field. Field making his way out of Tosa right now and doing so very comfortably, but behind them you can see you've got Bartel, who's just cleared a couple of the back markers. That's Williams and Hill battling for P28 behind, and Richard Jepp is a bit further down the road, as we see the South African of Bartel doing a very comfortable job here and looking strong for P3 as it currently stands, the Grumpy Monkey machine. And just to give you an idea, well, Kjellgren has come out once he had the drive-through penalty for the incident earlier in the race. We can see that the Swede has come out in P12, and it has been a very difficult race for Kjellgren with everything that's happened right now, but continuing to press on here just a bit further down the order. As we look even further down right now, we can see that as it currently stands, with Delcom getting closer to the back of Kjellgren coming out of Tosa, we do have Loisinger, Adrian Loisinger here in P18, continuing to press on and chasing after Saridis up in P17. But coming back to Kjellgren, I think Delcom is getting closer to the back of the Aston Martin driver here, the Swede under pressure from the Belgian as they come down towards Aqua Minerale here, and we jump on board with the Aston Martin driver as they come into go. Oh, and there's a little bit of contact between the two. Delcom getting very fighty indeed, and the contact between the two as they make their way up towards the Alta chicane. You can see Delcom immediately looked for the move on the inside, but I think then realised, you know what, actually I'm not going to be allowed to do that one, and the stewards are going to see that. He backed off and flashed his lights to say I'm sorry. Well shown there by Delcom, the sportsmanship, but that was very close to a potential move coming out of Aqua Minerale, but it didn't quite work out, and then Delcom just carried too much speed into the right-hander at turn 13 and hit the back of Kjellgren's car, and Kjellgren will not be happy with that, but I think he'll be happy with the fact that Delcom did not gain an advantage out of it. Instead, he naturally gave away and started the battle over once again as they make their way then onto lap number 28 here, and it's going to be close between these two as we see ahead of them right now, and indeed having made a massive recovery drive as stated by OTL Mr. Fish in the Twitch chat is Jonathan Atkinson. He's up into P11, he's 3.4 seconds off of Chris Zuger in P10. Could he close down Zuger and get himself a top 10 finish by the end of this one after the disastrous start which saw him take that drive-through penalty, of course? But Atkinson definitely pushing on all the same, the British driver, and will we see him in the top 10 by the end of it? We will find out. But what I've also can find out for you folks is while Le Floic has got a 10-second penalty, and of course this is for the number 717 car, and it's been confirmed to us that it's for aggressive driving between himself and car number 107, and as a result it's aggressive driving which enabled him to gain a position in the eyes of the stewards earlier on in the race, and it is now the case that Le Floic is penalised with a 10-second penalty that will be applied to his final race time. Well, meanwhile up front what we can say is that Walker in P4, and remember we were expecting Walker to gain massively through the pit stop window, and he has indeed. He's gained all the way up to P4, and he's a little bit off of the battle for P3 right now. He is 9 seconds off of Bartel, who in turn is approximately 4 to 5 seconds off of Field. But I think for Walker, if he can can hold on to this P4. He's got Faulkner chasing after him, who's 4.5 seconds down the road right now. Then Walker could be on for a P4 finish, and he'd be very pleased with this indeed. As we do look a little bit further back, and we can see Apple here in P6 with Harikonen falling off the back of him, and Harikonen and Svensson running together here. The two ITR drives in the Ferraris staying together, P7 and P8. But look what's looming large in the rear view mirror. It is Crew Cam, the Grumpy Monkey machine, the Bentley, looking closer and closer with each and every lap. And I think Crew Cam could be hunting down that potential P7 come the end of it. To give you an idea, on that previous lap, Crew Cam a 43.1, Svensson a 43.6, and Harikonen a 43.4. So that Bentley really coming alive right now, and somewhere in the region of 3 to 5 tenths of a second faster than the Ferraris ahead. And I think, given the fact we've still got 24 minutes to go, that's approximately 12 laps, it will be the case that Crew Cam will be looking very strong come the end of it if he can keep it together. Svensson is the first target, of course. Will he be able to find his way past the American, or will she put up a big fight and not let the Grumpy Monkey through as they make their way through Tosa and up towards Piratella once again? Meanwhile, looking a bit further down that order, we can see that Delcom right now with that 13th place that currently stands after Kellgren, not able to find a move on the Aston Martin front is the Belgian as they make their way, and you can see just a little bit of wiggle there. The car just starting to snap. It's starting not to behave as much, and we do know that Porsche can get a little bit difficult to drive come the end of the race once tyre wear starts to factor in, and also just that natural wear and tear on the car. And Delcom feeling that a bit as he goes wide out of Piratella as well, and I think Romain just started to have to fight the car a bit more than perhaps he would like as he heads down into Aqua Minerale, chasing after Kellgren, of course. Every little mistake as he goes wide out of turn 13 as well, and Kellgren as a result being given a brief respite here, as we do see that Delcom gained a little bit of momentum at coming out the corner, but he's backed off of it immediately, knowing not to gain the advantage. So Delcom pushing hard, but knowing when he's past the limits and when he's not permitted to do so, and doing everything he can, of course, to stay and keep it clean. As we look a bit further down our order right now, and we can see Koloridis, the McLaren driver, of course, making his way through Aqua Minerale, the Greek, the best part, 2.7 seconds down on Pontus Carlbom, and 4.5 seconds up on Ingo Horman. As we have had a couple more retirements, we've got 26 cars still remain on circuit, and we do have Antonis Latsos, who we haven't seen too much in the race, the Greek driving the Bentley, with a drive-through penalty there. We're not 100% sure why the Talpuri Racing Team driver has got that penalty, but we will try and find out for you in a little while. It's a late move on car 797 earlier on in the race, and the contact between them saw both cars go off onto the gravel, but the stewards have decided that it was because of Latsos' GM Petro with a stop and go 30-second penalty, and surely that must be for track limits, because we haven't seen anything to suggest otherwise. He's got Carlbom behind him right now, and Carlbom at one point was making that major recovery drive for it only to go horrifically wrong, but it is the case right now that we are seeing that with regards to GM Petro. I can tell you, oh goodness me, and there's major contact between GM Petro and I think, was that with Carlbom? Well, I think there might have been some contact there. We're not 100% sure on the camera, but as we were just looking back at the drivers there, well, it was a case that GM Petro into the wall. Now, it was absolutely horrific, and you have to wonder what Pontus saw from his perspective as he continues around the circuit right now. But GM Petro's day has gone from good to bad to absolutely horrific, and he'll be looking to bounce back as of next week. I'm sure this has not been a good day for the Frenchman, who continues on his way, and the attrition rate on our drives today has been huge. We started with 34, we're down to 26, and Voss under huge pressure here, and it's a good thing we jump back. Our race leader under massive pressure from field, and to give you an idea on that last lap, Voss had a major off. We're not sure where he had the off, but he's under huge pressure from field, and the gap between them was 8 seconds, and he lost all 8 seconds that lead over the previous lap. So Voss not able to run away with this one. A mistake has crept in somewhere, and he's got 20 seconds to hold on. And as they make their way out of turn number 7 here, out of Tosa, Field will be wanting to make this back-to-back wins, and Voss will not want to be denied for the third time. It would absolutely sink into his heart. Which one of them will be able to get away with it? Bartel is 5 seconds down in this battle, of course, so Bartel's not involved for the time being, but you can see Voss just putting a little bit of a gap as they go through Piratella up into Aqua Minerale right now. But it is the case that the number 222 driver really feeling the pressure here, and will Field be able to find a way around as they make their way out towards the auto chicane. He looks to the midfield, he looks to his side. He's not got the overlap, however. It's just a feint into the chicane, trying to get Voss to go off his natural racing line as they make their way through here. And Field falls back a little bit as Voss gets a very nice run through the chicane and heads down towards Ravazza once again. And to clarify there, for those of you in chat from Lerb there, missed out whilst travelling home from work, wasn't Carlbom in second place after the start? He was indeed, but the contact between himself and Atkinson Atkinson, which saw Carl Bomb go all the way down the order and Atkinson pick up a drive-through penalty. And since then, Carl Bomb has had a very difficult race to take and has dropped all the way down the order. That explains that. And it's push with regards to Delcom from FDRT Riddick in the YouTube chat here. We won't be looking at Delcom for the time being. We'll be staying with our race leaders here as the battle continues, and Field is chasing after our P1 man, really starting to put the pressure on. We ride on board with the Swiss, who's trying to make it 2 wins back-to-back, denied only the win at Catalunya, of course, through that penalty that was applied post-race, but he'd love to take another win, and he'd love to take it off of the fastest man in qualifying, and the driver who would think to himself that I deserve the 3 wins so far, as they make their way through turns 4 and 5 and heading up towards 6 and 7, and as they make their way towards 7, now Tosa, as they come up towards the corner, it is the case that Voss having to look a little bit defensive, as well as also on the natural racing line here, trying to say to Field, if you want a way through, I'm not going to make it easy for you, as they charge up towards Piratello once again, and you can see going into left-hander here, Field will drop back a little bit naturally through the dirty air. They're in equal machines, of course, in terms of their Bosch Porsche 911 GT3s, but they'll have different tunes, and we know Field loves that high downforce setup, which keeps him very close to the cars in front and gives him great apex handling speeds. As we see, they make their way through Ackerman and Raleigh, and you can see how Voss just drifting a little bit there, whereas Field looking a little bit more composed. The setups of the cars are noticeable by comparison as they now charge down into the Alta chicane once again, and as they go over the curbs here, you can see Field getting a poor run there through turn 14, and as a result going a bit wide, and it's opened up the gap considerably. Just one little mistake there, riding high on the entry apex curve, and as a result Field now has to make up a couple more attempts. It's 7 attempts the gap between the two of them, but there's still plenty of time to go. We've still got 18.5 minutes, and you won't want to miss it as we look further back, and we see that Bartle 4 seconds down the battle for a lead right now, and just carrying on all the same in the Grumpy Monkey Bentley here as he makes his way onto another lap very shortly. He goes onto lap 33. Meanwhile, Ben Walker making his way through Ravazza right now in P4, in a very peaceful P4 as well. And indeed, behind him, as we see there, I think that's Richard Jebb getting it very wrong coming out of Ravazza. But we can see behind we've got Faulkner here in P5, and a comfortable P5. And then it's Apple, who is up against a lot of traffic. He's got Latsos, Hill and Williams all battling for position here. But he wants to flash his lights and tell them, let me through, because I've got 2 Ferraris that are breathing down my neck. As Zuga has a drive-through penalty here. And I'm not sure what for, but you can see that Hill and Latsos battling. But it's the case that Hill backs off, he lets Latsos take the position, and Apple is able to clear 2 of the back markers through the run up towards the first chicane. So both of them being very smart and savvy with the race, and you can see that Hill actually tried to do that to gain an advantage on Latsos by letting Apple force Latsos wide as how they make their way down towards Villeneuve. But looking further back, we can see that Svensson's still chasing after Harikonen, and they've got Crew Camp still starting to breathe down there. Crew Camp being only 1.2 seconds away, as we see there is a drive-through penalty for the number 25 car of Chris Zuga. Well, Atkinson is over the back of him, and Atkinson will make his recovery to the top 10 once Zuga is out of the way. We're not sure what that's for. Let's just find out in terms of what the drive-through penalty was for Chris Zuga. As we take a look there at our notes, and where it hasn't been declared as of yet, as far as we are aware, for the number 25 car, we will find out for you as soon as we possibly can. But it is the case that the number 25 car with that drive-through, and that is a disaster for Zuga as he goes defensive versus Atkinson, trying to hold him up as much as possible here. But I think this is a valiant effort, but it's not going to go very far as they make their way out of Aqua Minerale here and head down towards the Alta chicane. You can see that Crew Camp just ahead, closing on the Ferraris as Atkinson looks to move, but he can't find it into the Alta chicane. Meanwhile, in the battle for the race lead, I can tell you that it is still only half a second between our race leader of Voss and Field in P2 right now. These two are inseparable. They're locked in a head-to-head as they make their way through the chicanes once more, and you can see with 16.5 minutes to go, it could be either one of them. And I appreciate that people tuning in right now. We're going to have a split camp as to who is going to be the winner. Some of you will be saying Voss, some of you will be saying Phil, but regardless, let's hope they keep it clean all the way through, which I'm sure they will. As you can see there, how Voss is avoiding riding high on the curbs, whereas Phil is trying to attack the curbs as much as possible, and it's making it very difficult for Voss and Phil as well, because they've both got very different lines. They're both gaining and losing on one another time and time again, but neither one is able to gain an advantage, and Voss just doing enough to hold on for the time being. As we hear Zuga is coming to the pits for his drive-through penalty, releasing Atkinson up into P10. Here is Atkinson making his way down towards the Villeneuve chicane right now, so he has been released, and Zuga losing a lot of positions here as those penalties are still coming in for drives, and Lefloic, of course, in P12 still has a 10-second penalty to be added on to the race. But coming back to our race leaders, we can see Voss again. Field seems to have that better run coming out of Aqua Minerale and as a result, Voss gets caught up initially as he goes a little bit deep there into the auto chicane, but he keeps it together and he's got some back markers ahead. Now, Field, of course, will be happy to see the back markers, but he'll be hoping that they stay out of the way for the pair of them and don't just let one of them through. And Field, of course, if he could find that Voss has to carve his way through the back markers, then he'll try and stay as close as possible to Voss in order to essentially get a free pass on the back marker, such as Mills there. Mills down in P22, not really battling anyone at the moment, is our P22 driver, but still running a solid race at the rear of your camera. As you can see that Field continue to chase after Voss, but they're inseparable and their lap times show it as well. Last lap from Field, a 43.0, last lap from Voss, a 43.1, and it's only literally a tenth between the two of them, lap after lap. They are putting in the laps of their lives right now. We're not even at the halfway point of the season, as we can see Field attacking the opening chicane, and once again just a little too aggressive. You can see how it's unsettling the car, and this is not what we're used to seeing from Field. He's normally so composed, but he wants this win so much, and you could just see it in the driving style. Normally he'd be much more relaxed in terms of driving style, but here he knows the only way to get into that win is to take Voss on and essentially play his own game, go full attack every lap. You've got to be putting in qualifying laps to chase Voss down, and you've got to make Voss work so hard as to be pushed into a mistake, as we see there that Jesse Monroe's moving out of the way for both drivers as they make their way up into Piratella, neither of them being compromised, and all of our back markers being very respectful for this very close battle between the race lead. 14 minutes to go. It's so close to call it. They've still got the best part of another 7 laps after this. Who is going to be the winner? Well, I can tell you right now, based on predictions, you would say that it would be Field, but that's from form as we look towards auto chicane, and Voss still ahead. Field trying to go for the dummy time and time again, but I think Voss will want this one so much. I think he's going to hold it as much as he possibly can as they make their way down to Rabatza once again, and you can see in the rear of your camera shot Bartel now having to clear the traffic. The Audi there of Mills getting a little bit unsettled as they make their way through the auto chicane, but looking back at our race leaders as we ride on board with Voss and look back right now, they come out of the final main corner and head onto the start-finish straight. And again, it is inseparable. The gap last time around was 0.3 seconds as they come across that timing line to go on to lap number 36. It's 0.3 seconds. And you can see what Voss is trying to do. He's not trying to run wide across the start finish straight. He's trying to shorten the run as much as possible down towards turn 1. And he goes a little bit defensive here into the chicane at turn 2. And as they make their way through, there's no way through for Field, who gets a much smoother run this time. And now they make their way down towards Villeneuve here. And as we jump to the exterior cameras, we can see that Field getting closer and closer, and I think he's just trying to find his rhythm. He's finally found a way. I'm getting through the first chicane without making that overstretch mistake, and as a result now Voss under attack from Field. They go into Tosa, Field on the outside, Voss on the inside. Voss having the commanding position, of course. He's able to take a more natural racing line versus Field has to go for a cut back line. He'll get the acceleration out the corner, but at this point Voss can choose to just go defensive. He'll put himself in the centre of the road up into Piratella, and will he do so? Well, I think Field's going to wait. I think he's sensible here, Field. He knows not to go for the move into perhaps one of the tightest corners of the circuit as they make their way down towards Aqua Minerale right now, as they come into the sequence of 3 corners, 12 through to 14 here. We can see neither driver making a mistake, both of them so close. Field riding a little high on the apex of 13, and it just drops him back by a tenth of a second, and it's those individual tenths of a second which are denying Field the ability to attack Voss as he goes deep into the chicane almost clipping the back of Voss's car, and that's going to open the gap up to a second. So Field making another small mistake, Voss pushing him to the limit and holding on for the time in is the Frenchman versus the Swiss. The gap opens up. Meanwhile, elsewhere around on circuit, I can tell you that Svensson is now down to P10. When it all has happened, Crew Camp is up into P9 and Atkinson in P8. I think there's been a mistake from Svensson somewhere around on the lap, because we haven't seen any penalties come through for Svensson, but as a result we can see that Atkinson is continuing to make that recovery and is all the way up into P8, making his way right now through the auto chicane. But coming back to Svensson, we can see the battle is on between Svensson and Delcom as they go into the right hand of the auto chicane, and you can see Svensson doesn't have the way to stay on the inside for the second half, and Delcom has got ahead. Svensson down to P11 and dropping a little bit further down the order. The next driver coming up is Lafloic, but there's a 10-second time penalty to Lafloic's race, so as a result I think Svensson won't mind as much if Lafloic finds a way past eventually. But meanwhile, back with our leaders, you can see that is the case that Field has started to reel Voss in again. It's a rinse and repeat. We've seen this time and time again. The gap starts to come down where Voss just simply can't make a break, and the Field continues to push, but as soon as Field gets to about 3 tenths off of the back of Voss, that's when the two equalise, and I think it is just the case then that Voss has to just simply put in the solid laps, and Field just doesn't have to make any mistakes. They are continuing to run like this as they did before, time and time again. as they continue to push on all the same, making their way now up towards the auto chicane. And you can see here how Field are trying every which line, trying to find any way to get into Voss's head, trying to convince him something's going to happen, a move may potentially happen, and also perhaps even coming out of the dirty air, thinking about it, of Voss's car there is Field to try and cool the brakes down, the tyres down a little bit in that dirty air as they make their way down to Ravazza. But the gap is definitely 7 tenths as it currently stands. It's a little bit bigger than what we've previously seen, and as a result that just calms the temperatures down a little bit and gives Voss an opportunity to take a deep breath whilst there are 10 minutes of this race to go. But meanwhile in P7 we can see that Harikonen chasing after Apple right now, and behind him he's got Latsos, who is the best part of a lap down. That's Latsos in P25 in the Bentley, but looking at a Ferrari driver chasing after Apple, a 2-second gap to overcome, and I think it may be the case that it's not achievable today. We will wait and find out. Of course, Svensson has been given a drive-through penalty in P11, and what is that for, you may ask? Well, that for our Ferrari driver there, the number 3 car, is because of an incident between them and car 797. I believe car 797 would happen to be, that would be Tim Williams. So that's why it all kicked off, and I think that's why we've seen Svensson fall down the order as well. So that's a drive-through for avoidable contact between them and Tim Williams, and that is why we now have that drive-through penalty for Svensson, who is not having the best of days today, and will be kicking themselves about it, I am sure, as they come into the pits. But meanwhile we look back up to our race leaders, and Voss is being reeled in once again. Field again in that position of being only 2 tenths off the back of the race leader. It's almost as if we're putting it on a cassette tape and winding it back every time, because it keeps happening, but it's fantastic to see. And this is where you want it to be, in terms of we've only got 8.5 minutes left, and we've got our 2 race leaders neck and neck, 2 very different driving styles, 2 very different setups on the same car, and as a result of it now, it is a question, which one is going to bring it home? Will it be the more aggressive driver, or will it be the one with a higher amount of downforce, but normally the more consistent driver? Will it be Voss, or will it be Field, as they make their way down towards Ravazza once again? But you can see how Field just cannot stay with Voss close enough, going through the auto chicane, and as a result, Field, who we're now looking at, has to fall back, and I think this is where Field needs to find a way. He had this issue going through the first chicane where he wasn't able to stay close enough without clipping the apex curb of turn 3 too high, and that was causing the rear end to come loose. And again, Field is experiencing the same issue at the auto chicane. It's these small mistakes which cost Field the ability to stay within that 3 tenths of a second window versus Voss, and he's got to be so close because these cars are so equal in terms of performance right now, and that's where Field needs to gain. He needs to be right there, literally sniffing the backside of Voss all the way through the lap, because then when Voss makes one tiny microscopic mistake, that's where Field's going to have the opportunity. It's going to be one chance, and he's got to be there to seize it. If he's not, however, Voss will hold on to this, and doing a fantastic job right now, as we see Bartle meanwhile just down in P3, continuing to press on there, with Monrose in P21 behind, just gone past the back marker of Monrose, and Mills chasing after Monrose. But the best part of what is 6 seconds down on Monrose is Mills, as they make their way then through Tosa and head up towards Piratella once again, and that is our P3 man. And you can see the gap between himself and Voss and Field. Voss and Field still battling one another, but Bartle not able to catch up. In fact, falling back by a second over the best part of the last 5 laps. That's how fast the 2 Porsches ahead are going, and it is incredible to see that, as we see that Walker meanwhile in P4 gradually reeling in a little bit of Bartle's lead, but not by a huge margin. And I think it's the case that P4 is really on the cards for Walker, as we see Faulkner right now in P5, and again in the quiet P5, as we've got Apple, who's trying to get past Yep there, Richard Jep, and he's got past the British driver as he makes his way into left-hander, does the German. That's our P6 man. Harikonen meanwhile in P7 here. He has, however, got Atkinson getting ever closer. The gap between the two of them is now 4 seconds, but Atkinson is reeling it in. We'll keep our eyes peeled on that one, but those are the closest battles in the top 10, and indeed the closest of any battle is our battle for the race lead, the one we always want. And as we can see here, going on to what is a lap number 40 very shortly, Voss leading, and that gap is 5 tenths of a second, with approximately now 4 laps remaining as they head onto another lap. And you can see just how close it is, as Voss being hounded by Field and continuing to do so here as they charge round through the chicane. And you can see Voss being closed in, and Field has definitely got the first chicane now. He now knows how to close the time on Voss, but then it's the second chicane through Villeneuve here. Is he able to find a similar way through, as we see both of them making their way through the corner once again? No change between the two of them. It's so equal, both of them using the exact same line. And now coming up into Tosa, you can see Voss taking a slightly tighter entry line there in order to get on the power just a little bit earlier, but Field meanwhile taking that deep line. In fact, Field's had a much better run out the corner here, but it's not a mistake from Voss, it's just a difference in the lines. Field going for the acceleration line, whereas Voss going for the tight line, and as they now make their way through Piratella, it is the case that Field goes a little bit wide, but he's still got the momentum. He's got enough momentum to carry him through into Aqua Minerale, but they are so close here, and you can see go through the corner that Field has to back it off. He's got such an overspeed into the downhill braking zone of 13 that he just gets so close, and he's getting closer and closer. He looks for a little move into Alta, but he can't find it for the time being. He's only 2.5 tenths, if that, off the back of our race leader, but he falls back in the end through the Alta chicane. He gets a better run this time, does Field, though, so I think he's starting to just rectify the mistakes for the Alta chicane, but he won't be close enough here into Ravazza as they make their way down into the braking zone here. Once again, 2 tenths is the gap between the two of them. We jump on board with our P2 man right now, who is chasing after the race leader. You're riding with Field, the Swiss from CHF Motorsport, who is doing everything. He is throwing the kitchen sink and then some at Voss in order to catch up to him and make the move. But these two have been like this now for the best part of 10 minutes, as we see that a small bit of lag there from Voss, and also jumping over to the other side of the circuit there. They make their way down towards turn 2 here. No change here, although Voss goes a bit... Oh, goodness me, Voss has made a mistake! Voss has made a major mistake into the braking zone for the chicane at turn 2, and as a result, Field has gained the position. The pressure's kicked in, and Voss goes a little deeper. Will he come back immediately? Now the question will be on Voss. Can he keep it together and find a way back? Or will it be the case that Field is able to pull away here? Of course, Field will now be clear of the dirty air of Voss's car. So he went... Oh, and Voss is coming back for a move on the inside. There's no contact between the two of them, but Field wasn't able to shut the door and has to go a little bit wide on the centre here. And now as they charge up towards Piratella, of course, Voss is going to have to do everything he can to try and get Field to make a mistake or stay right there, because we see as they make their way through Piratella here, Voss extremely close to the back of Field's car, almost touching it every corner here as they make their way into Aqua Minerale. He does not want to give this up. It was a small mistake, and he wants to say that to Field. He wants to say the only way you got through was a minor mistake, and I'm coming back through for you. He's literally touching the back of Field's car. Field goes defensive to the inside and still to chicane. Voss has to go to the natural racing line, but that's going to cost Field a lot of speed through the chicane. But both drivers there taking a run over the apex curve there at turn 15, and Voss falls back a little bit. He drops back to 4 tenths of a second off of the new race leader as they make their way down now towards Ravazza once again. Approximately 2 laps remaining after this one. Can Voss find a way back, or is Field able to break away here? The gap is now half a second, but Voss will be looking to catch up in short order. He's going to chase after him. He's going to push every which way. Voss will not want to be denied again as they make their way across that timing line. Then 2 more laps to go. Which one of them is going to be on that top step as Field is being reeled in? The gap between them now 3 tenths of a second as they come down towards the braking zone for turn 2. One more time. As they come into that braking zone, you can see just how Voss is closing up so much. Field is having to nurse the car on the brakes now. He's putting so much effort that as a result that Voss is able to attack. But as they come out the corner there, you can see the difference now with Field not having the dirty air of Voss's car in front of him, because he can run all that downforce now and it's not as heavily affected. He's able to take those more clean lines. But the return, of course, is that Voss will have the straight line speed advantage. And you can see in the rear view camera shot, Bartel only 4 seconds off of this battle now. They've cost one another 2 seconds versus Bartel. But I don't think, unless they really take a lot of time out of one another on the final lap, I do not think Bartel's going to be in this fight for the race lead. Although never say never, you do not know what could happen here, and it could be a surprise to the Bentley driver who's just making his way up towards Piratella right now. But we stay with the leaders. This is the closest battle on circuit as they make their way through towards Aqua Minerale for the penultimate time here. They go into the right hand, and you can see there Phil going a little bit deep, but able to get it back together. Voss taking a much more aggressive line. The two of them are inseparable lap on lap here as Bartel is closing. He's inching ever closer in the rearview camera shot as we see Phil taking a very deep line there through the chicane, and this is the opportunity that Voss needs. He's so close right now. He's 2 tenths off. He won't have the longest of runs into Ravazza, but if he can be there coming out of Ravazza, it will be the best chance he can have at coming back at Field as they come through turns 17 and 18. The double left-hand sequence here, and you can see that Field has made a small mistake under braking. He's gone a little bit deep into the corner. This is Voss's chance. He's going to go for it as we ride on board with the French driver. They head down towards turn 1, but you can see Field getting the better run out the corner initially, just able to hold on for the time being. It wasn't the best exit out of Ravazza as they charge down. It's the penultimate lap, and as they head down towards turn number 1 and 2 for the final time, which one of them is going to be the race leader? We stay with it until the very end as they make their way through the left into right combination. You can see Voss just on the limit. The car goes a little bit wide, and I think that may be it. I think Voss has made a mistake unless he can close it back up over the course of the Villeneuve chicane and on Tosa. Never say never, of course. Voss will throw everything at this one in order to close it up here, but that gap is starting to open up as Field's had a better run through the opening sector here, and as they make their way through Tosa now, can Field pull away or will he make a mistake? Of course, he's still got just over half the lap to go, Field, and you can see Voss is right there and Bartel inching ever closer as they make their way over the brow of the hill. Into Peritella they go. They're only separated by 0.6 of a second now as they charge through. The camera spins around. Come on, cameraman, get some grease on that camera as they make their way down towards Aqua Minerale and coming into the right-hander combination here. You can see into 13. Field just holding on, goes a little bit deep, but we know that's his line. Voss taking the tight line. Voss getting a much better run out of the corner here. They head up towards Alta here. Now, will Voss fake a move? He fakes a move initially, but it costs him a little bit of a run there up into the corner. He's just trying to do a dummy there, but Field is not going to fall for it because Field's been doing so many dummies every single lap. It's literally the final lap. They've only got 2 more corners to go and then a drag race to the finish. Field is only 2 tenths ahead right now. Will he hold on or will Voss find a way through? They make their way into the double left-hander sequence here and you can see Voss is all over the back of Field. It's going to be a drag race to the finish line as they come out the final corner, and you can see Voss is all over the back of him. But in the end, after 75 minutes, it will be Field who takes the win. Yves Field wins by only 0.2 of a second ahead of Mathis Voss from France, and then it will be Ross Bartel who comes home to pick up the P3. After 75 minutes of frantic racing, Ben Walker will come home with the P4. A happy result for the distinct GG driver from the United Kingdom in the McLaren, and then it is going to be a 5th place for Ethan Faulkner, the head of the Ferrari column, making it home in the end in P5. The Irishman will be very happy with that. Apple will not be able to get the top 5, but he'll still get a top 6. A great result from the German. And then Harikonen holds off Atkinson by the smallest of margins in the end as they cross the line. P7 to Harikonen, P8 to Atkinson, who makes his recovery to P8 when all is said and done. Crew Camp in P9, a brilliant effort from Crew Camp. And then it'll be Delcom after all the back and forth of the drive-throughs and the penalties. Coming home in P10 does the Belgian. Lefloic will come across the line with that 10-second penalty, so that will be in the end, I believe that will be Yun who picks up the P11 when all is said and done here as he crosses the finish line. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our racing order for tonight. What a fantastic race. But indeed, I think for these two in particular, as they make their way through Piratella on the cool-down lap, you can imagine right now that Field and Voss are probably looking out their drivers' windows at one another and saying to one another, great race, mate. This is going to continue throughout the season. These two are definitely in a very strong place when it comes to the races. They just seem to be in a little bit of a category of their own at the moment after 3 races, albeit Voss has had the more inconsistent races, but he's been able to show tonight, has Voss, the Frenchman, as he makes his way up the hill right now. He's shown that he does have that consistency when it matters and he can nail it, and if he can iron out those mistakes, we are going to have one heck of a championship battle between Voss and Field, albeit don't rule anybody else out. Of course, we do have Bartel picking up another very strong result there. We can see Ross Bartel making his way around the circuit right now in that P3. He will be very pleased with that 3rd place in the Bentley, and alongside him, just a bit further back, we've got Walker, I think, who's actually fallen a little bit off circuit somewhere. Walker there in that P4, but it has been so very close as all of our drivers make their way round to complete the cool down lap and bring it into the pit. And very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, we will of course be bringing you those drivers' interviews, starting off of course with our race winner, Jens Field from Switzerland. We'll introduce him first, but then we'd love to hear from Voss as well as to how he feels about today's race. But we will be right back. Give us 5 minutes for those interviews. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're going to bring Yves into the interview box to start off our first interview with our race winner.
I can't believe it.
Hello, Mr. Field, you there?
Good morning or good evening, whatever.
I don't think the time of day matters anymore after that race win. How does it feel to have made it 2 out of 2?
I'm so wet right now. I can't believe it. What a fight with Boss. What an amazing driver. I was so lucky there. I can't believe it.
Oh, just take us through. It was a fantastic battle, but in the build up to it, you qualified, I think it was P5. Just take us through that race start, because you seem to have this thing about you start not on the front row, but normally just 1 or 2 rows back, and you just make up the places very gradually.
Yeah, my qualifying really wasn't the best. I was quite, didn't have the confidence in the car at the start, and I just kept on going and try to stay on the track, obviously. And yeah, I tried to manage the tires, and yeah, somehow it worked a bit, but in the end, the tires were like, nothing.
So just on the fact of tyres, we knew going into today's race that the track temperatures were going to be critical with regards to the tyres, but also the brakes. Just take us through what the temperatures were doing out there for the viewers who may not be seeing that as much from the third-person perspective.
Yeah, it was quite hot. Like the whole race, my tires were really yellow. Which means it's pretty hot. Normally it should be green. And yeah, it was like 46 degrees, I think. And so I had the brake ducts, which are for the cooling quite open. Yeah. So that's it.
But coming back to the race then, so with regards to the stints, what we sort of saw was when you were closing up to Voss gradually, you seemed to be driving in a very relaxed manner. Was that more to protect the car, or did you expect that perhaps a mistake would come to give you the opportunity to catch up to Voss at the end?
Yeah, I was so nervous. I didn't want to ruin his race because I was so close to him, and he had such a great drive. I mean, he dominated the whole race pretty much. Just in the end, he had a big mistake, and yeah, I kind of feel bad for him. And yeah, just tried not to hit him, but wasn't really focusing on gaining place, because I would have been happy with the place too, to be honest. But I saw his pace was a bit down. I think his tires weren't that great in the end. So yeah, just kept going and tried to push him into a mistake.
And when the mistake did come, and then you were the one being hunted right at the end, how did it feel being on the other foot? Because we know that you like to run the car normally with a lot of downforce. So behind Voss, all that downforce was being compromised by his dirty air. But once you had clear air, was it a case that you felt, I've got him now, or was he still a threat?
Honestly, the feeling was way worse. It's just, you see him behind like 1 or 2 meters behind the rear bumper, and yeah, you have huge pressure from behind. And yeah, but I had to stay focused on the track, not watching the mirrors all the time. Yeah, he tried a move like in the second last corner of the race. I was quite scared about it, so I closed it a bit. But yeah.
It was a fantastic drive from the pair of you, and for you to hold on, it's really we reckon, based on what we've seen over the first 3 races, I mean, you're the favourite at this point. You're leading the championship, but Voss was nipping at your heels. Going into the into round 4 at Snetterton, do you expect it's going to be between you two again, or is it a circuit you're not a fan of?
Nah, I'm not a fan of this circuit either, but I try my best, and we'll see next week.
Oh, well, we look forward to it. I mean, when we spoke to you following Zandvoort, you were saying that you're perhaps not expected to have the greatest of races at Imola, but you've had a phenomenal race at Imola. I mean, based on that form, surely you're going to have the best race in the world at Snetterton.
Yeah, I hope so, but yeah, I was quite lucky this time too.
Oh, well, congratulations on the win. And we look forward to seeing whether you can make it another win or at least another podium finish at Snetterton in a week's time.
Yeah, see ya and have a great evening.
You too. Alrighty, well, you can definitely hear there from Mr. Field that it was one race where I think it came to him. Of course, he was lucky, describing lucky there with regards to the mistakes and the battles up ahead because he was behind, of course, Atkinson and Carl Baum at the start, but the instant between the pair of them moved them out the way for Field, and sometimes luck just rolls your way and keeping it clean and consistent. But that battle right at the end, pardon me, between himself and Voss, I think it's going to be one of the battles of the season, and by looks of things, it could carry through to the entire championship. But speaking of Voss, let's bring our P2 man into the interview box. Hello, Mathis, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, firstly, I know it wasn't the result you wanted, but congratulations on second place. How do you feel about it?
Thank you. Oh, I'm so bad. I'm sorry, but I'm not speaking very well in English. And Fields is just a really good driver, and just one error and lost the P1.
It was very close between you two.
Yeah.
But going into this race, given the two difficult races you had, were you feeling happier at Imola?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Imola is just an amazing track. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking very well.
That's no problem. We're happy to have you in here. So, one final question. Snetterton, good or bad?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Next week, round 4?
Yeah?
It's at Snetterton.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to it or not a good circuit for you?
Yeah, I'm good. Very good this week. Yeah. I'm P1.
Well, fingers crossed for you, but thank you for joining us in the interview box and congratulations on second place today.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Take care. Well, whilst you appreciate that his English may not be fantastic, I'm very grateful to have Mattis Voss in the commentary box there to join us for that interview. And I think all of you will say as well, with regards to the different chats that you're on, whether it be YouTube, Twitch, or alternatively Facebook. Grateful to hear from him. And you could hear the excitement in him. Whilst he's not able to convey it very well in terms of words, you can hear he's had a fantastic battle and looking forward to next week. I think he really feels that there's going to be a rivalry between himself and Vesfield for the wins. And well, if that is any indication of the calibre of the fighting between the two of them, we have got some fantastic battling ahead. But let's have a chat then to our third place man, Ross Bartle. Hello, Ross. Can you hear me?
Ah, Paul, yeah.
So firstly, Ross, congratulations on third place today. How does it feel to be on the podium?
Thanks, man. I want to say pretty good after the first 2 rounds. The qualifying didn't go so well there, but bit of patience in the race. Knew we had the pace. So yeah, turned into a good one. Pretty happy with that.
Definitely. And one thing we saw that whilst in qualifying things did not go as well as perhaps they planned, you seemed to have a lot of race pace in that Bentley. It was almost as if after the first 3 or 4 laps, the guys up front started to be reeled in gradually. There was this big chunky Bentley just chasing them down lap after lap. Had you focused more on the race here at Imola in terms of the pace?
Yeah, I think we focused a bit more on the race pace. I also did a long enduro a couple of months ago, which also helped, I suppose, in terms of track knowledge. It wasn't in this car, but that obviously helps. So yeah, it just turned out that the race pace is better than the quali pace. yeah, I kind of hope that the guys in front were seeing that big Bentley and sort of scare them into some mistakes, which didn't happen often enough. But we can only hope for the next one.
Oh, most definitely. But it was a very strong performance. And I think towards the end of the race, you probably saw off in the distance Voss and Field battling for the win. Were you hoping that perhaps they would battle a little bit more and just gradually bring themselves towards you? Because you were closing them sort of a tenth or two a lap, then it was half a second occasionally, but it was just a big gap. It was 6 seconds, I think, when they started battling, and by the end it was about 3 seconds when they finished battling.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, I was hoping they would battle a bit more, but I probably had a few tenths in hand through that final stint. I had a few too many track cuts in the first stint, so kind of wasn't really worth the risk. No one coming from behind, so yeah, I just took it a bit easy in that second stint, and yeah, so it gradually caught them, but I think would have had a bit of a bigger say if the qualifying had went well. So yeah.
Definitely, and looking forward to next week then, Snetterton. Is it a circuit you're looking forward to, or alternatively one to miss?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure how the Bentley's going to go around there, to be honest. I think we'll soon find out. We've got a good base setup, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, fingers crossed for you, because I know you've had a difficult start to season, but finally to see off of the podium is fantastic. Enjoy the third place, and we look forward to seeing what you can do at Snetterton next week.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Cheers.
Cheers for joining us, Ross.
Cheers.
Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, you can hear there in Ross, I think it's been sort of the third time of asking it's finally happened. You'll remember that at Catalonia there was that major incident between Ross and a driver behind him which took him out right towards the end of the race when he was on course for a top 5, and then in the wet at Zandvoort last week it just wasn't to be for Ross. But today it really worked out, and really that hard work and that mill at the grindstone has worked out to the point that he's finishing that third place. So all of our podium finishers very happy with their performances there, and it has really marked off what has been a fantastic race. And I'm sure there's stories that could be told through everybody up and down the grid. There were battles left, right and centre, but really that's all we've got time for today with regards to round 3 at Imola. So thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, feel free to check us out at our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups Next Gen Racing. We also want to say a very quick thank you to our partners, without whom this would not be possible. The SimGrid, check them out at thesimgrid.com, or Coach Day Academy, coachdayacademy.com as well. You can Google search them. But until next time, that's goodbye from me. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and we now look forward to round number 4. Next time, we head to the British circuit of Snetterton for a very different circuit compared to what we've seen in the opening 3 rounds. We have another change up, but who is going to be our race winner? Will we see another win from Field, making it 3 wins out of 4, or will we see a different winner entirely? We'll have to wait and find out. But until then, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, stay on track. Good night.